Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Point out the exits are in the back and the side of the room. If need be, you can follow them to the exits that lead you to the outside of the building. Any and all correspondence that can be posted are posted on the table outside in the hall. I'd like to open the floor to any students in attendance that would like to speak on any matter. They can come to the mic, please. No one coming forward. We'll move forward. Mr. Bartels, Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Just a quick update on our quarantine status. Today there were only 13 students that were on quarantine instruction, and there are only going to be 11 students tomorrow. We had 2 positive cases reported yesterday, but there were 8 reported today. Those numbers have dropped dramatically in the last couple of weeks. We are still running between 10 and 20 on quarantine instruction each day, so we're still hoping that's going to continue to drop and get down into single digits later this week and into next week. At this point, we have many COVID-19 home test kits on hand. We're making them available in each of the school buildings. They'll be with the security guards at the main entrances. We're asking anybody who needs them to stop by their schools after school starts or before school ends, so that it does not interfere with the arrival or dismissal procedures at each building. We've also added a new item to our agenda tonight, cabinet reports. This is a placeholder that will be for short, timely, informational items to be reported by members of our cabinet. This really is replacing the committee reports for curriculum, pupil, personnel, and business that we had while Mr. Chang was in as superintendent. And it's really to inform the board and community of various activities or other important information to present taking place in these areas. So that's going to be a new item on the agenda for tonight. I guess we can probably lead right into that. So I'd like to turn it over, maybe just kind of go down the line. Start with Dr. Sampino.
Sure, good evening. Just a quick update from New York State. The New York State 3-8 testing will be taking place. It's March 30th and 31st and April 27th and 28th. Grade 4 science, this is the last year of science in grade 4. Next year there'll be no science exam, and then it moves to grade 5. New York regents are also given to be, looks like everything is going to be on track, so that's great. We're working with the community ed to offer free regents review for our Rockville Center students. We have more information to come. We have to, the wonderful people at community ed, Mr. D'Ambrosio and Mr. Walter, are figuring out locations. They're going to be getting teachers, and we look forward to offering that to our students. So again, more information to come. A quick technology update. We're going to be transferring our elementary students to Chromebooks. It's going to begin with 5th grade, so we plan to do that after the winter NWEA. So more information will also be coming on that. And the wonderful RVC Ed Foundation is here. We just sent out our grant proposals from the Ed Foundation. And just the main mission of the Ed Foundation is to enhance the educational experience for our students, and they are wonderful, and they're going to be here to talk a little bit later. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Love, Director of Special Ed and Pupil Personnel. Some updates we have for you tonight. It's just a reminder that March 15th will be Mental Health Awareness Night. There'll be various workshops related to mental health topics will be presented. It will be a virtual platform, and so as we finalize the schedule, it is an evening event. We've had some additional speakers, so we're finalizing the schedule. That will be emailed to all community members. with a link to log in to this event on March 1st. So if you're interested, just keep that on your calendar, March 15th. And if you forget, it is posted on our website, the PPS Special Ed website. It's anticipated that we will be extending our special class 812 program, which is currently housed at the Hewitt School, to the Rockville Center Southside Middle School. And we're very excited to have our elementary and middle school staff working together to ensure a smooth transition for all of our students who will be entering that program from the elementary 812 program. Additionally, we did a check-in for our Sources of Strength program, which was rolled out to grades 3, 4, and 5 in December. And we've got some wonderful responses from our staff. We also had a parent information night a few weeks ago that was well attended by parents. And we got a lot of positive responses to that event. It was hosted by our staff trainer, Deborah Caputo, who's trained our staff and worked with our faculty on this program, but she did present to our parents. And she is also willing to provide another evening, maybe later in the year, for any parents who aren't able to attend that event. In case you're still hoping to get some more information about the program, she's been wonderful and available to all of us. But I did want to read you an email that I got from one of our teachers from the Riverside School. And it's from Chris Zappia, who's one of our elementary teachers. And we reached out to all of our teachers, grades 3, 4, and 5, to see how they felt about the Sources of Strength program. And I asked him if I could share his email with you tonight because he had such a nice response. He said, "Thank you so much for checking in with all of us. I, for one, am loving the Sources of Strength program. My students find the activities fun and engaging. They especially enjoy the games involved with each lesson. I appreciate that photocopies have been made for each student. It is so nice to know that they have all the materials they need in advance. In addition, I'm very thankful for the Google Doc timeline and slides created for each lesson. Alyssa Brenner and Denise Cabas, those are our elementary guidance counselors, did a beautiful job creating these documents for my class. They've made the program so easy to use, and I'm so grateful, and I thank you again for reaching out regarding this program." So it was really nice to see that our staff is finding that our students are really benefiting from this new program. Is he actually at Wilson? Covert. He's actually a teacher at Covert. I realized that while I was reading it. Forgive me, I'm still getting to learn where all the teachers are. So I just thought I would share that with you. And then there was one more thing. Mr. Murphy's here tonight, our high school principal, and I have to thank him for working so closely with me in researching a language option for our classified students or any students who might need a language 1 option at the high school. And we are not sure which language it will be, but we are working on and committed to making this new class available for our students at the high school. So I just want to share that with you and thank him. He's here tonight for all of his hard work with me on that. And that's it.
Thank you. Ronnie?
Hi, I'm Ronnie Lalo. I'm the Acting Assistant Superintendent for Business. So we have a couple of points we wanted to mention tonight. At the end of January, the New York State Comptroller's Office released the Fiscal Stress Monitoring System results, and we're pleased to report that Rockville Center Schools was classified at the highest classification available, which is no designation. The classification is an indication that our fiscal health remains stable. We received this designation last year as well. Also, we received some news on an additional pilot or payment in lieu of taxes that the district will begin receiving. This pilot is due to the sale of the RBC Diocesan Office Building on Park Avenue. While the building was owned by the diocese, the building was exempt from property taxes. Although the terms of the pilot have not yet been finalized and the hearing date has not been set, according to the town of Hempstead, the preliminary terms are that the pilot is set to run for 20 years. The portion of the pilot that the district can expect to receive varies from $180,000 a year in year 1 to $480,000 in year 20. The property is expected to go back onto the tax rolls after 20 years. The district will be notified once the hearing date has been set. And just a reminder that even though free meals are currently being provided to all students throughout New York State due to the pandemic, those families in Rockville Center who may normally qualify for free and reduced price meals through the application process should still complete their applications. Although we do not know when the current program will end, by filing an application, parents can ensure that the benefits will continue throughout the school year. In order to simplify the application process, the district provides an online application available to all parents. You can access that application online as well as a paper version by visiting the RVC Schools website. And then lastly, next week, on February 17th, at the board meeting, we'll begin our budget discussions with the board, and we'll be presenting our budget proposal to the board. And that's it from the business office.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we continue, I see a lot of people in the audience, in attendance that are not wearing masks. We are still under the governor's mandate in schools to wear masks, so I'm going to ask you all to please put your mask on. You're breaking the law as far as we have to follow it. Thank you. Before we go any further, there are two students in the audience that would like to come to the mic and speak. Or one.
Hi, my name is. I am here to talk about why I think wearing a mask should be optional in school. Last year when we went back to school in September, my mom told me that I had to wear a mask to go back to school. I was upset and didn't want to wear it. I hadn't worn a mask all summer, but my mom told me that if we wanted schools to be open, we needed to do this, and it wouldn't be forever. I thought it would be weeks, but then months went by, and before I knew it, the whole school year was done, and I had never taken my mask off. In the school building, I felt like it was prison with my mask on and the barriers around me. I wasn't able to get up and talk to my friends. This was very hard for me. There was no pictures of me and my friends smiling next to each other at class parties or in school pictures. Thank God summer came and I was free to not wear my mask indoors, and it felt like normal. In September, I thought this year was going to be different, but then my mom told me I had to wear the mask again. I hate it. It distracts me. I constantly am annoyed by it, and it falls down. This makes me feel mad and upset. I have to wear the mask when we have indoor gym. It's so hard to run with the mask on. The PACER test is coming up soon. I wonder how much a nightmare that will be. I know my mom doesn't have to wear a mask when she works out at Orange Theory. It's not fair that I have to wear it at gym when I'm running and exercising. I feel like I can't breathe. More than half the time, I am not able to wear the mask correctly over my nose and mouth because it bothers me so much. If I'm not wearing it correctly, then it doesn't work. Why bother then? I don't have to wear a mask when I play with my friends at parties or sleepovers. Why are the rules at school so different? It makes no sense to me. I know some people in the audience will think my mom wrote this, but she didn't. I wrote this because I want you to know that wearing a mask for 6 hours is really hard and not fun. I want school to go back to normal. If some kids still want to wear the mask, that is fine. I just really don't want to still wear mine. I think together we can make a change.
Thank you.
Thank you, that is all. Hi, my name is I also want to talk about why I think I should have a choice to wear my mask in school. First of all, I have a hard time breathing in it all day long. It hurts my ears to wear it all day long, and no one can hear what I am saying when I wear it. Secondly, if I ask for a mask break, I have to sit all alone in the hallway by myself. That takes away from my learning, and that is why I don't take mask breaks. Why can't I sit in my classroom and still listen with my mask down? Lastly, there will always be viruses and colds. We can't keep our mask on forever. I want to go to the kids' night out and the class parties and hang out with my friends without my mask. This is what we do all the time except for when we are in school. I am confident that we can work through this together.
Thank you. We're in items for information. I'd like to welcome Mr. Mark Mason and Ms. Maida Kramer up to the mic. They are the presidents of the Rockville Center Ed Foundation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak tonight. If you don't mind, I'm going to turn a little this way so I can speak more to the audience. I'm Maida Kramer. I'm the president of the Rockville Center Education Foundation this year. For those of you who don't know who we are, the Ed Foundation is a nonprofit organization that raises money to fund grants that are proposed from the school district staff, and then we award these and fund these grants to enhance the education of all of your children. Our staff is very creative and innovative, and they come up with some amazing grant proposals. Dr. Janine Zampino is our liaison to the district staff, and she works with them to help them to come up with some programs. She'll say, yeah, this is really good. It's to support the curriculum. There are so many great programs out there for children that unfortunately the constraints of the school district budget can't support. And that's where we come in. Every dollar that we raise goes back to your children. Over the years, the Ed Foundation has been around for about 30 years, and over that time period, it has provided approximately $1 million back to the children of this school district. Some of the programs that have been funded, which your children may or may not even be aware of, is some of the robotics programs, a lot of music programs, a lot of technology programs. We've given money for equipment in the TV studio and the photography studio. The money goes to every building. Each year it varies depending on the grant proposals. As Dr. Zampino mentioned earlier, the application has gone out to the staff, so they'll be sending those back soon. But we can't raise our money without our annual gala, which you see is up there. That's our invitation. We emailed that invitation to every district member, every district family, retired staff. This is a big year because we're getting to honor Dr. Johnson, who's been patiently waiting since 2020 when we were unable to have our gala due to COVID. We haven't had one in person since then, but on April 3rd, we will be at the Alegria Hotel in Long Beach. It'll be a beautiful setting. It's during the day, so we hope that the doors will be able to be open and you can be out on the boardwalk, out by the beach. It's going to be rather pretty, and we're very excited for it this year. It should be a great turnout. We've been supported over the years by the school district and the school board. The president of the school board this year, John O'Shea, is also a liaison to the Ed Foundation, and they support it by attending. We hope you'll all attend. We also have a journal where you can put an ad in. The business community and the merchants of this town are tremendous, and they provide gift certificates and other merchandise so we can have these great raffles and silent auctions. And there'll be a DJ at the event, and it's a lot of fun.
Yes,
Want to add anything?
definitely. First, a quick question. For the people, members in the audience right now, can you raise your hand if you have not received an emailed invitation? Great. That's good, because nothing has been mailed this year. Everything is via email. So please look at the invitations and follow the links in the QR code to get to the foundation's website. And we really hope that you can see a way to attend and or put in a sponsorship for an ad. 100% of the monies that are raised go back towards enhancing the education of our children. And as Maida had said, over the years, it's roughly $1 million at this point.
So if Mark mentioned a QR code, you're not going to see a QR code on your invitation, but outside on the table, there's a flyer, and the flyer does have a QR code. It will take you to our website, and that is where you can purchase tickets. You can, if you're unable to attend, you can still donate money. Or you can get a sponsorship in our journal. And we hope to see you there.
And
We'll be dancing.
It's Sunday, April 3rd at 1 o'clock at the Alegria down in Long Beach. We hope everybody will attend. I know John has been letting the board know with all the events, and hopefully the public as well during these meetings. It's been a while since either of us have been to one of these meetings, but on the other side. So if there's any questions, please let us know. On the flyer, there's a website on the bottom. Just go there for the URL, and you can find whatever information you all will need, and just follow the links. So we appreciate the opportunity to come before you and to let everybody know where we are. And tickets are for the gala are becoming a hot item, and get there and
Get 'em quick.
Get them quick. Okay, we thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Kramer.
Great
Thank you,
night.
information. Mary Lou, that information is on our website also? The district website?
Yes, it's on our website.
Right, great. See, if you can't find it through some other source, you can go to the Rockwell Center website. Mr. Bartels, an update on Red and Blue.
Yes, thank you. As everyone probably knows by now, our Red and Blue event for this year is well underway. Students are very excited and practicing hard for their competitions. It's great to see them in the halls earlier this evening, running around practicing. There were a few loose ends I wanted to update everybody on. First, all the events, as we have had in the past, will be in place again this year. The tumbling event, which we had a number of questions on, will be in place with students wearing well-fitting masks. We do have braces being constructed by district maintenance staff to support the hockey boards so that the students do not have to hold them in place. So that will take care of that event. Costumes are again in play, and students and parents are scurrying for materials, trying to stay within their budgets. And the remaining piece at this point is the spectators. So we are still seeing positive cases in the pandemic. We want to be a little careful at this point. So At this time, we're going to allow at least one ticket per participant, which would be about 300 spectators each night. We are still 3 weeks away. Hopefully, infection numbers will continue to trend downward. I want to see where we are, kind of follow these numbers for the next week, and I'll make an announcement at next week's budget meeting to see if we're comfortable extending that number of spectators. So I'm hoping we can get back to where we were in the past with 2 tickets per individual, but right now we're going to go with at least 1 per participant.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bartel. But that is all pending, that nothing changes by our governor or assembly, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
we're doing our best. Hopefully everything's pointed in that direction, but one never knows what our governor will decide tomorrow, unfortunately. Mr. Martels, an update on masking.
Yes, leading directly into this issue. So as most people know by now, the mask mandate for most locations will end tomorrow, according to the governor. For schools, however, the mask mandate continues to run through February 21st, and Governor Hochul has again stated that she's going to wait until after the February break to make a decision on extending the state mask mandate for schools. The temporary stay to keep the mask mandate in place from the appeal of the New York State Supreme Court of Nassau County decision runs through March 2nd, where the proceedings will continue and the stay may be extended again or lifted. The governor continues to refuse to provide any metrics on which she is basing her decision to lift the mandate, only stating at last announcement that she wishes the 5 to 12-year-old vaccination rates were higher, but she does not say what she wants that rate to say. So this has left the school districts in the dark as far as planning for when this mandate may be lifted. Community members in this and all school districts are at odds with one another over this mandate, the likes of which I've never seen. The lack of metrics or timely notification only adds to this confusion. The other issue we may face is the governor continuing to change guidelines at the last minute without notifying school districts. School boards and superintendents associations have continued to lobby the governor for a timeline and specific guidance in advance of a decision to lift the mask mandate so that plans can be put together in a timely manner. I've based my decisions on the law and the guidance from the state to which the school reports. I follow guidance from our attorneys when something is not clear. And I've tried to stay with that train of thought as I try to navigate this pandemic. So, based on that reasoning, I'm recommending the following plan of action once the mask mandate is lifted for school districts. And it's important to again note that this plan is based on an assumption that no other guidelines will be changed when the mandate is lifted by the governor. So, the plan is to continue to follow our reopening plan where masks are required under the state mandate. So, when the mandate is lifted, masks will become optional for students and staff. I am not recommending no masks, as I believe many students and staff may want to continue to wear them. There are some exceptions that we need to be aware of that as far as masks becoming optional. So due to federal transportation law, masks are still going to be required for all students and staff who are riding a bus. These students and staff will have the option of removing the masks at school, but they must be worn while riding the bus. In addition, all students and staff returning from a quarantine after 5 days will be required to wear a mask for the remaining 5 days of their quarantine period. We plan to keep all current social distancing efforts in place. Students will continue to eat lunch spaced apart as they do currently, and we are not going to be crowding them together at cafeteria tables. Teachers will refrain from pulling all students onto a small carpet, for example, for a reading or other close contact activity, if students are not masked. All staff will be vigilant and continue to watch for students exhibiting any COVID symptoms or not acting normally, where they may have a headache or a fever, and those students will be reported to the nurse and will be sent home if they are indeed sick with COVID symptoms. Students will be informed that masking is a choice and they need to be considerate of their classmates. There is to be no bullying or singling out of any kind of students who choose to wear masks or not to wear masks. Students engaging in any such bullying will be disciplined appropriately. Students will also be advised that there are certain trusted staff members they can go to and talk to if they are having any concerns or worries or anxieties about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, or if any other students are making them feel uncomfortable about their own personal mask choice. While we are no longer actively contact tracing, if there is a student within 6 feet of another student for more than 15 minutes who tests COVID positive, that student would be subject to quarantine if they are not vaccinated and both students are not wearing a mask. There will not be a remote option for students who do not want to come to school because of a mask optional policy. The only remote instruction will continue to be for quarantine support for those students who are quarantined or isolating due to COVID protocols. Again, I have to reiterate again, there may be caveats or restrictions imposed by the governor if and when the mandate is lifted, so we need to remain cognizant that this plan of action may need further modification should that occur.
That's your,
That's
all right.
my plan, and that's what I would expect to happen once the mask mandate
Okay.
is lifted.
Even though Mr. Bartel's recommendation would revert back to the opening plan we have, and that plan says we are going to end mask mandates when the state end mask mandates, I would like to make a motion in support of Mr. Bartel's recommendations to return to parental choice on masking once the state lifts the mandate, and with the caveats that he did explain and those certain restrictions.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm just confused procedurally why we're making a motion. Are we opening up to questions? I fully support everything Mr. Bartel's said, to make that clear. I'm just confused as to why we're making a motion to support.
Because I want to know if the board is in support of Mr. Bartel's recommendations, and because of the confusion of that one Monday evening when Mr. Bartels was left to make those determinations by himself, and he did have a lot of criticism of his decision-making. I'd like to stand in support of what his recommendations are tonight.
Second.
Any other?
I don't know what you're,
Do you have any questions or comments?
Are we supporting Ms.?
I'm drafting a resolution so that we can have a,
That was my procedural question, thank you, because, yeah, so are we drafting a resolution saying that we're supporting the superintendent's recommendation?
okay, I need 2 seconds to finish my sentence.
Mr. O'Shea, can we not be addressing the board?
Excuse me?
Like, I'm just asking, I'm getting distracted. I was just,
I'm asking
Mrs.
Mara,
Farzani, I think, is asking
Mara,
Mara a question.
who is the school district attorney, is that a necessity for us to have that resolution?
Can we vote now?
Or can we vote to support Mr. Bartel's recommendations?
It will take me 3 seconds to finish. So you want to vote, you need to know what you're voting on.
Okay.
So the resolution is what you're voting on. So if it be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations regarding mask wearing as presented at the February 9th, 2022 Board of Education meeting.
Okay, so we're voting on that resolution. We're voting on that resolution drafted by our attorney.
So just, Mayor, if everything is kind of packaged from the governor and this lifts, we already have a reopening plan that we are going back to using. If something, if she puts something out that is different than our reopening plan, that there's an expectation that if there's no mask, then we have to change something, we have to take another resolution to accept changes to the reopening plan. So in other words, I fully support Mr. Bartels and his proposed plan. However, if the governor comes out and throws a wrench into that plan, we would then be required to take a resolution to adopt something new.
So if the governor comes down with other specifications or requirements, the district would be legally required to follow those determinations. So the district can't not, choose not to follow them. So if it says that in order for masks to, so I'm gonna use an example. If it says for in order for masks not to be worn, all students have to be 6 feet apart, if the children are not 6 feet apart, they have to wear a mask, and therefore you have a mask mandate in place. So, it wouldn't need a new resolution to follow the law.
Right.
With how things have been going with COVID, I would never say never. And there may be some kind of choice in some documentation. So it is possible that there would have to be a follow-up resolution depending on what it is. But if it's something that is legally required, the district would be required to follow it.
So if we're legally required, I think I'm still confused as to what we're taking an action on, because I think we agree that we're following the law. That's inappropriate. If your president's not going to stop you, I will. It's inappropriate. I'm asking a question for clarification, okay? What I'm asking is, we have taken an oath of the law to follow the law. So what is different is what I'm asking, because what I don't want to happen is that something is overpromised and the governor takes it away, and then the district is being looked at as, why did you agree to do this, and then you didn't do it. I think that there's a misunderstanding as to who's making that decision, because we will follow the law. When the mask mandate is over, we will support and move forward. But I'm just curious as to if she takes something away, I don't want there to be a misunderstanding of that the board is making up their own rules as we go either, that there is a legal.
What was that?
Yeah, well, John, honestly.
I'm going to read this, but just to Mr. Bartel's point, he did say if the governor puts a caveat in the law, making something different and impossible for us to deal with it, it gives the district the opportunity that they may have to change what's in there. He explained all that. And that even if we approve this and Mr. Bartels had a change in there that wasn't exactly, if our opening plan doesn't reflect what the governor demands of us, we'd still have to meet to change that opening plan, because that opening plan would bind us to what's at that point. Is that right, Matt?
Well, that's why I was asking if we had to have another resolution then to change the reopening plan, or she's saying we don't.
So at this point, because what Mr. Bartel's recommendation is basically to follow the reopening plan. The reopening plan as written indicates that the mask mandate is linked to the state mandate for masks. So if the state mandate for masks is removed, the district would then be not requiring masks because it's not required by law. There are other districts that don't have that. There's no linkage between the masks and the mask determination. So in those districts, they've had to change their reopening plan if their desire was to make it that when the mask mandate is removed, that the kids may have the choice.
All right, so I'd like to read what the attorney came up with as a resolution.
What about Eric?
Okay, Eric, I'm so sorry, Eric.
I don't have any specific question, and similarly, I do support Mr. Bartel's recommendation. I just really want to be clear, though, that should there be any changes from the governor, as in 6 feet is now required for lifting a mask mandate, that would be something we'd have to discuss, because as a school board, our priority is keeping your children in the school building where they can learn. Obviously, we know as school board members, as parents, and as educators, the mask does not make things easy. But our priority is keeping children in school. So as long as everyone is under the understanding that we are moving forward, making this recommendation with the thought that the only thing will be lifting a mask, then I'm fine with supporting that recommendation by Mr. Bartels.
And Mr. Bartels also made note that if
I understand
things
he did. I
change,
just want that to be very clear that should there be something else that is said, that, again, we are doing our due diligence to keep your children in school. That's really all I'm saying, is just to be very clear on that point.
Okay, the attorney came up with, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations regarding mask wearing as presented at the February 9th, 2022 board meeting.
Sorry, my handwriting is like a third.
Do we have to, I'm sorry, one more question. Do we have to have Mr. Bartels' comments somewhere to back that up or on record, or is this just him publicly stating it at this meeting enough to back
Well,
it up?
he's publicly stated, I would recommend that we do have, we could attach kind of what the recommendations were, so we make sure it's clear exactly what, we also, I believe the meeting is being live streamed.
Yes.
So we also have the live stream of the meeting, but it is not a bad idea in order to put, what it is, so it's clear, there's no questions, and that it does include all the caveats given.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm asking that we take a vote on this resolution. Does anybody need me to reread it?
No.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously. Is it, Mara, is it your determination that the superintendent should send maybe a letter out to the community as the same, or just put it on the website, or explaining everything that he went through?
So, I mean, definitely, I would put a statement on the website, whether, it's more of a PR issue and, knowing your community about whether you think a letter should go out to everyone. The resolution really isn't changing anything, and that's where I don't think legally there's any moral requirement to have a letter. I would, make sure that the community is aware, so that people who are interested in either direction are just aware what the plan is. This way, the families could prepare their children in either direction. Because as much as everyone has been asking for notice and provide notice to superintendents, provide notice to school attorneys, to someone, anyone, she hasn't been doing it. The other problem also, so today she made the announcement that she's not having masks but doesn't apply to schools. There's nothing in writing. She doesn't have the ability to just say it, and then there's documentation that have to do it. So, as much as we try to avoid any kind of fast changes, sometimes it happens due to the lack of notice. So if parents are aware of kind of what the plans are, they could start to speak with their children about what could happen, because kids are hearing things on the news, kids are hearing in the paper, other students, so that it just provides more transparency of where to go, whichever side of the mask debate you're on.
I would like to ask that, and if the board is all in approval, that the superintendent send a letter out to the community stating everything that he came up with tonight, and add it to the website also.
Yes.
What's everybody's opinion on that?
I'm fine with that. I would just also request in the letter, if possible, that we can make note that for any person who still chooses to mask, that we will have KN95 masks available for all students and staff, daily, if possible.
We can try to do that. It's going to depend on how many people are looking for them. I don't know what that's going to entail. If we're going to provide them every single day for every person that needs them, they could get fairly expensive. So we can certainly try to do that. We do have quite a few of them on hand, and we will make them available as best we can.
Yeah, I would appreciate it as best possible that we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartels. You want that? All right. We are now proceeding into items for discussion. We'll start our conversation on curriculum, and then we're going to open the floor to visitors just to come to the mic and voice your concerns, your opinions, after, we're going to wait for the public to speak. After, it's not going to be a question and answer time. It's going to be a time where the community can speak to the Board of Education, and it's going to be recorded, and we're going to try and pull out all the questions and answer the questions, in the next meeting or the next few meetings. So at this point, Mr. Bartels?
Thank you. Well, we wanted to continue our curriculum discussion tonight on the high school and middle school programs. Mr. Murphy and Mrs. McGinn presented overviews at the last board work session, and we would like to get some input tonight from community members. Mr. Murphy is with us again tonight, and we'll make a few more remarks before we open it up for comments. Ms. McGinn could not make it tonight due to a previous personal commitment, but will join us at another meeting as we continue our discussions. I wanted to start again by thanking Mr. Murphy, Ms. McGinn, Dr. Sampino, and Ms. Hood for their work in running these programs, and to thank the teachers for their ongoing commitment to keeping up the standards of providing the students of Rockville Center Schools with an outstanding educational experience. As Dr. Johnson would say, all means all, and every single student in this school district deserves the best possible education. Sometimes the educational process is difficult and challenging, but that is what raises the bar for our students to achieve their best. When students find it challenging, they tend to reach back and do their best to succeed. Those who continue to have trouble are provided with the support structure to help them succeed. As students progress through middle school, they encounter increasing challenges in terms of the academic curriculum. When they reach 8th grade, they're assigned algebra and earth science, 2 high school courses. While intimidating to some, most embrace the challenge and are well served by it. These 2 courses open doors and allow for additional opportunities in high school than they would normally have had by taking these 2 courses in 9th grade in the high school. These courses give a taste of the high school experience while students are still in the more nurturing atmosphere of the middle school. By taking these 2 courses in 8th grade, it makes it easier for students to reach physics and calculus, while at the same time freeing up 2 additional high school courses that can be taken as electives, possibly in art, music, drama, or business, instead of continuing through to the higher level math and science courses. We want to provide students with the most options we can at the high school level, where they can choose their own path for college. I know there are some who do not agree with this methodology, and we may hear some of those comments this evening. I want everyone to know that, as Mr. Murphy stated at the last meeting, we're always looking to improve the curriculum programs and offerings, and have made changes over the last several years, adding pathways, co-seated courses, sign language, computer programming, and IB music and art. For those students who may have more hands-on technical aspirations, there's wood design, or a variety of offerings through Nassau BOCES in courses such as automotive mechanics, carpentry, welding, computer game design, cosmetology, animal care, medical assistance, among others. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Sampino, make a few more comments.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Bartels. As Mr. Bartels stated, Ms. McGinn could not be here. The middle school is planning an MYP presentation very soon, so more information to come. And at the elementary level, I'm working with our math AIS team. We're going to do a math presentation, and that's going to be at the end of March. We just have to firm up a date. We just want to let you know we really love this idea of the parent use. We think it's wonderful to get to focus on instruction in our schools and how to make them stronger. And again, I just thank everybody for their comments, and we are listening. Mr. Murphy? Our wonderful Mr. Murphy is here.
Is this hot?
I think so.
Hi. Thank you. And thanks to the board. And I'll be brief because of the series of talks that we've had thus far. So thank you for getting the ball rolling on January 27th as we open the discussion. And for the community and anyone present, though the agenda items as well as the talks themselves are now on the high school website, on the homepage, both the 10th grade parent night that happened on February 3rd, which was an introduction to the IB diploma program, The college symposium, led by Ms. Kelly Cross, the Director of Counseling, which occurred at the same night. Our Introduction to Parent University on Monday, February 7th, sponsored by the PTA, where we introduced course selection options in the 4-year process, as well as the subsequent PTA meeting. The conversations have been amazing, and I'd like to thank anyone here, including board members and community members who have provided input and feedback after the fact. This is complicated, and it's layered, and I think we lose sight of the fact of how complicated a place like a high school really is. Similarly, the decisions that we make aren't flippant and are serious. Moreover, we're in, I promised myself I wasn't going to use the word unprecedented. Okay, we're in very novel times right now, that these are experiences that there's nothing in the handbook that explains what to do, especially over the last 3 years. They're different, they're novel, they're creative. I'm just going to beg your indulgence as we move forward with these conversations and our plans, that if the issues that we're dealing with are different and novel, our solutions are probably going to be the same. And we have to be creative on all sides and look for a different creative solution. It might not be our past that has the answers, but something in the future. So part of this continuum was already in place. In 2018-19, we had very similar meetings to address very similar but different issues, such as workload, such as special needs students in a general education setting, such as rigor. And 2 things came out of that. One was a Pathways program, a 12-to-1 special education setting that's a blend of self-contained and general education classrooms, as well as a co-seated model for English and history 11th grade, US history and IB English history. And it had exactly 5 months of normalcy to take root before the pandemic hit. So I could espouse all the successes that we've had over the 3 years, but that would be disingenuous because I don't have data to support that. They've never had a Regents exam in either of the programs, which is our external validator. I can tell you about classroom climate. I can tell you that teachers have gotten increasingly ingenious in terms of modifying assessments and instruction in the 11th grade co-seated model. And they have also faced inordinate obstacles, as have our students, just keeping us afloat, engaged, and learning, period, let alone the Herculean task that we've set aside for them. The model that we're espousing is actually placing a lot greater onus on the building, on the teachers, and on the administration, not less. Similarly, the Pathways program has had huge successes in that the students in the program have found a home, have received more individualized support, feel a part of, and also get to experience the general education setting in their electives, coursework. So in that regard, I think there are successes, but they're still developing and maturing. And my request is to let us continue evolving and maturing those programs before we dissolve them. And they're only part of the solution, and I'm not that naive to think that that's the magic wand. Of course, we have to look at our electives and the diversity of them. Of course, they're not the only students who need the support. Both students entering the high school for the first time, as well as IB diploma candidates who deserve, we're living in a different world. 15 years ago, students didn't have the kind of extracurricular life, the workload, and the competitive nature of their lives, where whether we're sending it overtly or not, they feel that they have to be perfect. And how unhealthy is that? We'll build further programs to move as much of the work as humanly possible into the school day. Again, placing greater onus and emphasis on the building, on staffing, and on our instruction. We'll continue to revise the elective courses. We're not done, we're incomplete, and a lot of the decisions that we're making have been greatly informed by the last 3 weeks and the input that we've received. To make a long story shorter, I'm just asking you guys to work with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. All right, we'll take questions just on curriculum.
Actually, no, Mr. O'Shea, with all respect, there were actually 3 students. My son would like to speak.
That would be
So
fine.
we'll wait
Thank
to
you.
Missed, section 5, if you would.
No problem.
Mr. Bartels, rest of the board, thank you. Get that over.
You can take the mic down, it might be easier.
Lolly.
Good evening, Mr. Bartels and the Board of Education. I would like to talk to you about masks. I hate masks. I have all different types of masks. Transpiration masks, animal masks, I even have Batman masks. They look really awesome, but I hate wearing them. When I wear a mask, I literally cannot breathe. I have asthma, and sometimes I have to use my inhaler or get a nebulizer treatment so that I am not congested and I can breathe. When I wear a mask, I get tired very easily, especially when I am running and playing. It is so difficult for me to get oxygen that I pull my mask down under my nose. I love school, but I love being home much more because I can breathe properly and I don't ever have to wear a mask. Masks are literally disgusting. If you sneeze or cough in your mask, I hope you have another one, or else you have to wear a booger germ mask for the rest of the day. When you sneeze or cough, your body is trying to push the germs out of it. If you... No. Mask now and then cough or sneeze in your mask. The germs are in your cough or sneeze. Mask. Cough and or sneeze in your mask. The germs are in your mask now, and then you breathe them into your body again. That's just ridiculous. Some people like masks. They make them happy, and that's okay. Masks make me and other people unhappy. I haven't met a person that loves wearing masks, but my mom says they exist. Mr. Bartels, I heard that you are the big boss. Could you please make a school rule for the masks to be optional? That means anyone who wants to wear a mask can wear one, and anyone who doesn't want to wear a mask doesn't have to wear one. I think all the kids and teachers will be happy because they can choose what they want. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you.
Very nice job.
Hi, Stacy Pfaff, 6 Dover Court. Thank you for making curriculum the focus of the last public work session. I'm delighted to see this topic be a focus of the board's attention. I wrote to you a few weeks ago asking for a series of parent use to educate the community on our goals, our curriculum, the metrics used to determine success, and how we measure them, as I felt there was a knowledge gap about what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and how we make sure it's working. I was glad to see that there were 2 on the calendar over the past 2 weeks. They were both so instructive. I learned so much from the high school curriculum presentation, specifically that there are many paths a student can take towards graduation and a rich variety of course offerings that a student can tailor to their abilities and interests. The IB presentation was really my first introduction to what the program is about, and it makes me really excited for my children. The curriculum is described as focusing on inquiry, critical thinking, writing, and communication. If I had been asked, these would have been the exact goals that I would lay out for my children's education, and I hope that with whatever changes may come in the future, these remain our guiding principles. Please host more of these learning sessions and create some specifically for parents of younger students so that we can understand the entire district philosophy of education and what each step in our children's education is building towards. Inevitably, any curriculum or program will have problems, and I imagine other parents will speak tonight about areas where adjustment is needed. Parents with firsthand experience need to be heard from. Does their experience match up to what your data is telling you in terms of meeting our goals? I ask that when you hear these parents and respond to their concerns, that you do so thoughtfully and do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let adjustments be made based on thoughtful, data-based analysis of what is working and where there is room for improvement, and not in a reactionary manner. Engage parents, but also defer to the experts we have on staff. We should be making changes based on goals that have community buy-in and measurements of how well what we are doing achieves those goals. I would also urge that no major changes take place before we have a new superintendent in place. I do have one question I was hoping you can answer. I know you mentioned you may not answer things, but during the last public work session, a disbanded curriculum committee was mentioned. Can you give a bit of history of this committee? Was it new or in place for decades? What was the mission of this committee, and what were the reasons for its dissolution? Is the work of this committee undertook now being covered by another committee? Thank you.
Thank you. Look at back there.
Hi, I'm Frank Van Zant. I live in Huntington. I'm the president of the Rockville Center Teachers Association. Our advocacy is this: we must practice patience and partnership. RVC has established decades of high-level success, recognized in college admissions offices everywhere, a result of strong, visionary, and consistent administrative leadership, coupled with a highly skilled, trained, and talented staff. The IB program has been an excellent investment in student success, multidisciplinary, adaptable, and international standard. The IB saves the district from having to reinvent the curricular wheel all the time. For the parents who don't know, IB teaches thinking skills, argument, substantiation. IB preps for college success and writing college papers, and results in credit. My own daughter earned a semester of credit through IB from the Comac schools. Before we make unwise choices to change our valuable foundation, we must consider the dangers of tracking. Yes, tracking. Tracking is emotionally damaging. It leads to unfair elitism, and with lowered expectations, there is lowered student grit. Furthermore, we must sing our own praises. 67% of our students of poverty earned an Advanced Regents diploma. That's 5th highest in the county. 53% of students with disabilities earned the Advanced Regents diploma. That's 4 times the 13% county rate and 13 times the 4% state rate. And our kids get into good colleges. At the top 50 colleges, we enjoy an acceptance rate 24% higher than the national acceptance rate. Tracking, call it the easier path tier if you want, will take us backwards. Collaboration based on trust is our best way forward. An abrupt change in philosophy without a permanent superintendent in place will only jeopardize this relationship and the future success of our students. Any changes to this decades-long investment should be considered only with deference to our educational leaders and teacher experts attuned to harmful unintended consequences that rush and rashness may create. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Burgee, 15 Hendrickson Avenue. We're SEPCO Vice Presidents.
Debbie Cuevas, 4 Rutland Avenue.
I have something to read, but I just want to address something as well. Not once in SEP discussions with anybody here or anybody have we discussed tracking or anything of the sort. We're talking about programs that we have, and so much of what Mr. Murphy said is exactly what we're talking about, but we're going to say it anyway. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all so much for the support that you've given Ms. Love and her team to bring the changes we need to our elementary inclusion program. I also want to thank the teachers and staff who will have to make adjustments for the success of this initiative. These changes will be truly life-changing for our youngest Southside learners. I'm extremely excited to hear about all of the amazing things that our special education teachers will be able to do in these classrooms. It will be great and it will benefit all of the students, so thank you so much. At the last Board of Education meeting, you all continued a conversation that was started years ago at the SEP forums. After the forums, 2 major changes took place at the high school: the creation of the Pathways program and the co-seated 11th grade IB Regents classes. Understandably, we do not have adequate feedback at this time, but hopefully we will in the near future. We also added a very needed social worker at the high school after the forums, and these were all very positive changes with much promise to bring the support needed for so many students. Thank you again for your support in these changes. There is still room for some improvement at the high school, but we are on a very good path. So now, with the changes having been made at both the high school and the elementary schools, we really need to look at our middle school programs and assure all of our students have a balanced experience during these 3 critical years. It is a time to build student confidence through successes, and I mean real successes, not just successful outcomes, as you often refer to. Let's look at the success in the middle school as a whole. I envision every student walking into a test knowing that they have had the time to learn and truly understand the concepts. The feeling of confidence that they should have as they walk into those assessments should be equitable for all. As we do it now, some students are rushed through material, not fully understanding concepts, walking into tests, hoping that they will know the answers. Later, getting possibly disappointing results. Bogging students down with extra help, support classes, TLC, home instructions, and tutors is not creating balance, and it does not build confidence and self-worth. We can do better, and we must do better. I'm not going to stand here tonight and take everyone's time talking about the ideas that we have to bring balance to our programs. We will continue to have those conversations with Ms. Love and her team, but I'm here to express that we do need your continued support moving forward. Ms. Love brings a wealth of special education knowledge to our district, and we are very fortunate to have her on our team. I'm excited to see what she will bring us, and I'm hopeful that you will be supportive of her ideas and initiatives moving forward. I again want to thank you all for your support, and I am so proud to be a part of where we are moving forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
I'll just say my name again, Debbie Cuevas, 4 Rutland Avenue. On behalf of the SEP Executive Board, building representatives and members, I would like to say that we are all very much in favor to the proposed changes to our current elementary ICT program. I am fully supportive of all that Ms. Love presented at the last Board of Ed meeting. Having a full-day ICT program will have benefits for all RVC students, not just the students with disabilities. I think it is something that many parents of students with disabilities have advocated for within this district for many years, and we feel that we've finally been heard. We are also in support of having ASL as a foreign language credit for the high school students, and if that cannot be offered, we are in support of Spanish 1 being offered. Many of our students with disabilities go language exempt, and then once they're in the high school, would like to have that option to have a foreign language credit for their college applications. It is currently very difficult, not only for our students with disabilities who may have been language exempt to start the advanced class that is offered in high school, but it is also a challenge for any student who may transfer to our school from other districts. And I would also like to just say that our students are struggling. Karen and I see that at many of our SEP parent-to-parent discussions. They're suffering with learning loss, with loss of socialization, and with lots of worry and anxiety. And I do agree that there is a philosophy for all, but it's not all for all when our students with disabilities are bogged down with endless support classes, including being taken out of lunch for those support classes. So that, to me, is an issue that needs to really be addressed sooner rather than later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Debbie.
Gina Marie Bounds, 24 Ardsley Place. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Bartels and the Board of Ed for all your dedication and hard work, especially over these past 2 years. I can only imagine you're exhausted and occasionally feeling defeated with the ever-changing recommendations and mandates. I'd also like to say a special thank you to Miss Jeannie Love. When Ms. Love came to our district, I was impressed with her background in special ed, but most of all, what struck me was how easily she understood the importance of engaging the parents in these discussions. For years, I, along with many of the SEP parents here tonight, have advocated together for enhancements of the special education curriculum both at the elementary and secondary levels. So when I recently heard that the elementary level was changing the ICT classroom from 2 periods a day of special ed teacher in the classroom to a full-on co-teaching model all day, well, honestly, I couldn't believe it. For a parent with a child with special needs who may be pulled out of the classroom 3 to 4 times a day for services, we know the importance of having a special education teacher in the classroom all day to work very closely with the gen ed teacher to meet the full needs of the child. So Ms. Love, I told you privately, but I'm going to say this publicly, you are a superhero to the special ed parent. I also applaud the district for making such immense changes at the elementary level, and without wanting to sound ungrateful, I would like to revive the conversation surrounding special education curriculum at the secondary level, specifically middle school. The full-time co-teaching model being introduced at the elementary level can be argued as the gold standard of integrated co-teaching. As a next step, I asked that Mr. Bartels, Ms. Love, and Ms. McGuinn work together to bring this to the secondary level. From what I understand, the ICT at the middle school places a special ed teacher in the classroom every other day, otherwise half-time, with a TA supplementing the other day. I ask that you please consider putting a special education teacher in the classroom full-time every single day. Transitioning from elementary to middle school can be challenging for any student. Add several related services, a learning disability, social hesitation, and perhaps even a one-on-one TA, and that challenge can become absolutely daunting. And that's without the gap of learning due to COVID, which we all know for children with special needs, that gap is even wider. If we believe in the elementary level that this is the gold standard and we're implementing it, why not consider it for the middle school as well? Let's set our children up for success for day one. My final thought for tonight is the 8th grade Advanced for All. While I appreciate that my 8th grader will go into high school with 2 courses and high school courses and regents behind him, I cannot express strongly enough how this is not the best option for all children. As a district, we have a strong special education program. That being said, does it make sense that these children in ICT setting should be taking not one but 2 high school level classes in 8th grade? It sort of feels like an oxymoron. Why not offer a pre-algebra class in 8th grade like most other districts do? And what about those children that work hard to be the average student? Why force the average hardworking student to take a rigorous schedule that parents have to pay private tutors for them to get through? Have we not learned yet what we're doing to the mental health of our children? Not everyone is gifted. Not everyone should be in honors. Not everyone is an A student. Not everyone's the best athlete or the best gymnast or the best dancer. And you know what? That's okay. I'm speaking to you tonight as the B student, as the average dancer, and I turned out pretty okay. More importantly, I have fond memories of my childhood, and I was happy. Look, I'm not trying to suggest that 8th grade advanced for all model directly correlates to the strained mental health of our children, but I do know we have created a society for them where they have to be perfect, the best, and high achievers. So as a board member said last meeting, which really resonated with me, we expect every child, regardless of their ability, to meet our advanced and rigorous curriculum, when in fact, we should be providing the curriculum that meets every single child. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
Good evening. Marlene McConey, 55 Andover Road. Thank you for this opportunity for discussion and development. When we look at the makeup of our students entering middle school, we see children whose last year of uninterrupted learning was 2nd grade. My commentary relates to the lack of curriculum options for those children who are now entering middle school. Research shows that this group is behind in math and reading due to pandemic-related disruptions. This group has been designated by educators as one of the most vulnerable group of students, given that they have experienced some of the steepest setbacks in New York State and potentially the nation. But in just 2 short years, every single one of those students will be considered advanced by the Rockville Center School District. So while it is true that our grammar school students have had the benefit of in-person learning and dedicated educators, that reality does not account for learning loss due to quarantine, isolation, pediatric consultations, and clearance periods. Our teachers have also been at an enormous disadvantage. Our parents and teachers are united, contrary to the message at this podium over and over again. Our teachers are tasked with juggling day-to-day preparation, added work, uncertainties associated with managing in-classroom and remote learning models. They're also ping-ponging between classroom learning, remote learning, catch-up learning, extra help, and support learning, all the while having to navigate these same issues personally and at home. So knowing this, my first question is, how can this model be sustainable? And for those of you who might not know what's in store, I'm an old timer here. I've been around the block a couple of times. So I'm going to talk about this in a way that some of our younger parents can understand. The accelerated math and science classes required in 8th grade at the middle school are classes that other districts offer but do not require in 9th grade. What does this mean for us? In 6th and 7th grade, our children will take 6th and 7th grade math and science. Then in 8th grade, they will take 8th grade math alongside 9th grade math and 9th grade science. Middle school children are already scheduled by default to lose an entire year of math, yet we are requiring that every student take accelerated math. So that begs another question. Why can't our children have the option to take these classes in high school? Why are we compacting 8th grade curriculum only to have our children fail and then take these classes again? Or to take remedial classes which take electives away? Let's discuss this notion a little further. We've talked about support here, pullouts, extra help, summer school. Those all seem to be the solution. Tutors are also an option for those who can afford them, and it's no secret that they have become the norm. But even for those students with the financial resources to push through, it all comes back to forcing children to believe they need extra help to succeed. So to me, these solutions do much more than take away our children's ability to do things that they are good at or give them joy. These solutions cripple confidence and create unnecessary emotional and financial stress for children and families alike. Now, couple this with the COVID slide.
Marlene, I'm sorry, time's up. Can you wrap it up?
I can wrap it up. The question becomes, how can the district expect every child to be prepared to take these 2 advanced classes? Every single child except for our core students. Why can't our children take prescribed state curriculum? Why can't there be another way for those students who are academically and unemotionally unequipped to handle the rigors of that accelerated learning program? Why can't we instead reserve space for classes that bring out their strengths? Classes that give them confidence and joy, classes that prepare them for whatever career or path they so choose. We have created a loophole to pathways at the high school level. My question is why? I'm not asking for tracking, I'm not asking for gatekeeping, I'm not asking for the district to dismantle our accelerated program. I am asking why there are not other options for our middle school children.
Thank you, Marlene, we have to wrap it up. I'm sorry.
Is it okay? Can I give it to somebody else to speak?
Sure. But
Yeah?
we need to move to the next person. We have to give everybody an opportunity.
Okay.
Mhm.
Alexis Volpe, 625 Hempstead Avenue. During the last board meeting, it was reiterated that our advanced curriculum for all philosophy exists at the middle school to prepare our children for high school calculus. But we have curriculum at the high school that will get us to calculus. So why does it need to begin at the middle school for all? And at what expense to my children, to your children, to our children? Calculus has always been the justification. I've been an active member of the PTA and a community advocate for 6 years, and I trusted the model. But sitting here today, as a mother of 2 young children, I can't fathom putting all children with learning loss into advanced classes. I can't fathom seeing more once thriving children struggle and dread going to school because they are placed in a level they are not ready for. The question used to be, how is that the best option for all kids? Now the question is, how is that the best option for any kid in New York or Rockville Center? If there was a child that was able to get through middle school regents before the pandemic, are we ready to acknowledge they might not be equipped to do so given the COVID-19 slide and stressors? I would like to close my comments with the utmost gratitude and praise for Ms. Love for what she's doing, as well as to Mr. Bartels. Taking over COVID protocols, tackling the biggest curriculum issue for our elementary school students and staff. You have made more change in 6 months than I have seen in 6 years. Our new integrated co-teaching model is long overdue. My soon-to-be 3rd grader, my niece and nephew, and many of our current and incoming students will surely benefit from your policy changes. I also applaud the teachers and administrators who have worked tirelessly to provide our children the best education possible while working within the constraints of an unsustainable and rigid model. But I also have a daughter moving to the middle school, and many of us with 1 or both feet out of elementary school doors want to know, how is this going to help my child who did not have the benefit of an ICT model? No one is blaming anyone. Our students and teachers and families are all working hard. We all have the same goal. We all want what is best for the children. Let us look at the reality and simply say it's not working, despite the fact it's been done for 30 years. There might have been a time it worked, but we are no longer leading the way. Let's look at the reality and afford all of our children and families options.
Thank you. I'm sorry, you're going to need a mask to speak.
Oh.
We're supposed to be wearing masks, so that's what.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Sure. Denise Woodbury, 54 Royal Court. Just to tack on to everybody as another old timer and a child in high school, I just want to add on to what's required in the middle school. In addition to the science and the math requirement, there's also the foreign language requirement, right? Which you have to take in 6th and 7th grade, and that's compacted curriculum also. And then because you're taking compacted curriculum in foreign language in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you have to take an exam to get through that so that you're taking correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a a foreign language level 2 when you get to the high school. So not only are you taking math and science that's advanced, you're also taking foreign language that's advanced. So it's not just the 2 major subjects, it's also the foreign language. So it's more than you think, and you don't know that when you're in elementary school. So you really have a tough time understanding all the requirements in middle school. And certainly for children who are language exempt, you're just missing out on every opportunity when you get to the high school to really flourish and try something new. So again, we really need to look at the middle school curriculum, and we really need to look at the options for high school. I would also like to add thank you so much, Ms. Love, for looking at the foreign language level 1 in the high school. I would like to add that the ASL class that's happening right now is wonderful, and I noticed that there's no job listing for a full-time ASL teacher posted right now, and I really wish you'd reconsider that. Thanks again.
Thank you. Anyone else with questions or concerns on curriculum? Thank you. All right. We are going to move on to policies and regulations. We are looking at 4260. And these are in stage 1, so it's kind of the first time we're looking at them. Anybody have any questions on how that is worded?
Just a question, Mr. O'Shea. We had been looking at a new tool last year. Mrs. Dion and I had researched it, and we had a presentation, the super eval. So a tool like that could be used going forward. I guess my question is, this is such a specific evaluation policy, and it outlines kind of something that I think is pretty antiquated, really, and old, the metrics or whatever that are used for. Maybe it's the next one too. I guess my overall question for any of these policies is, if we look to employ a new system, a new way of doing this, how does this impact this? Do we keep this until we replace it with something else? Or do we need to consider that because it's in our stage 1 again?
Yes, so currently the policy, 4260 and 4261 kind of go hand in hand. 4260 lays out just kind of the procedures, and 4261 provides the metrics that are being used. The metrics that are being used or looked at in the current policy are pretty consistent with, like New York State School Board's form is pretty similar to that. Sometimes they break it up into less categories, so it's like 3 or 5 and just more underneath. So if we are looking to change the rubric that's being used, the policy would have to be revised. Another way to handle it is not to have the rubric in the policy. Under the law, by September 20th, the district would file the actual document that's being used, not the superintendent's evaluation, but like, so for instance, you would file like the policy, with the district clerk. So one of the ways you could do is it would be a determination with the board and the superintendent. So if the board decided to change the policy, if we keep it in the policy, we'd have to revise it in the board policy as well.
So I guess it's a conversation for the board if we want to reinvigorate that conversation that we were having about using a new tool. It was a modern tool that we could use. Just something, as we're looking at this, it seems silly to not have that conversation because we had opened it up last year.
I have a comment. I know, Merritt, you said by law this is acceptable, and is it used by a lot of school districts, this sort of metric that we have in our policy?
So this type of metrics is definitely something, maybe not exactly word for word in every little underlying section, but the main topics. It's the relationship with the board that's traditionally in all of them. Dealing with staff and personnel relationships, community relationships, educational, leadership, business and finance, personal qualities. Those are all of the topics that are in really every single one of my district superintendent evaluations. Those are the key areas that when you're looking at and you're monitoring whether a superintendent is successful or not.
Because the tool that we kind of talked about last year, I know we never got it off the ground, but we did play around with it a little bit. At least I had tried to fill in my portion. It was complicated and it was time consuming. This seems a lot easier. And maybe we could just add, as you had mentioned, a section for comments, written comments.
Yes, so in my proposed revisions to the policy, again, not legally required, I did place comments under each of the sections so that board members had a place to put comments. One of the things, that maybe is a little bit different than some districts, many of the districts I've seen, it's 1 to 5, whereas it's 1 to 9. But I think that also allows for probably a little bit more focused evaluation, because sometimes when you're 1 to 5, you may have a little bit of a problem, and it kind of sometimes makes you have a lot lower of a score because you don't have really a lot of choice. But again, that's not legally 1 to 5. It could be 1, 2, 3. It could be 1 to 17. But that's probably a little higher. But I've seen more as 1 to 5, 1 to 6. But I don't think that's something that needs to be changed.
So as it stands as of this year, this by default is the instrument that we're using.
Yes.
This is our current policy.
Yes.
And if we were to make these changes and use this year and then use that perhaps as a basis to see what we like, what we don't like moving forward, then we can always come back and change it, you're saying, because it's not necessary to keep the instrument in our policy, just
Right.
It's necessary to have the policy.
Right. And one thing that is good about having it in the policy is when you're going year after year, and especially when you're the same person, to have consistency of the ways you're evaluating people is always good. So, it's not something that I think, I would recommend absolutely taking it out of the policy. It does make it a little bit harder to revise, but it not anything that's insurmountable.
But if we maybe thought if we wanted to tweak the 1 to 9 range or something, as you suggested, then we can use this year's experience to move.
Right, and use it, again, you're not stuck with it.
Thank you.
One of the things that we liked about SuperVal when we looked at it was that you first are creating goals for the year with the superintendent at the outset of the year.
Yes.
And yes, these headers, these relationship with the board, the communication, they all feature in and factor into those goals, but they end up becoming very specific about what you were looking for in that school year, so that at the end of the year, you're tying it back. This, when I say it's antiquated, is not the ideas are antiquated,
yeah.
but that it's not specific to this board's goals nor the superintendent. And with a new superintendent coming in, I think it would be prudent of us to revisit something like that, where we can, as a board, I think that is part of our job, and one of our main jobs is evaluating the superintendent. So if we can now really look at this deeply and say at the beginning of the year, we're going to really talk about those goals so that we have metrics to evaluate the superintendent fairly on. I'm concerned about it, and I understand we have this for right now and we're mid-year, so we can't do it, but I'm just hoping that we can continue the conversation and look at something like that where there's more communication from the outset of the school year moving forward.
So one thing I did want to point out is in the policy under the procedures in A, the self-evaluation instrument that the superintendent would prepare, that report does include the goals and objectives. So that would be, kind of looking at the discussions about the current goals and objectives is part of the evaluation, because the superintendent would have to include that in part of the self-evaluation instrument. So I think that's where it kind of does have a good balance of, look, these are the overall things that we're going to look at every year. And I said, those are the types of things that most of those are probably going to be in your goals, or at least I'd say 2/3 of them at least will be part of your goals. But then it also has that separate portion where the superintendent is showing to the board of how he or she would have met the goals that were placed by the board in the September meeting.
Yeah, I like the idea of having the shared goals and discussion at the beginning of the year, school year, meaning July 1st, right, starting there. and then it should be a conversation with all stakeholders, and it wouldn't have to necessarily be in this particular policy. It would be our district goals, and then everyone would know, and then we would be measuring the superintendent based on those shared goals that we all come up with.
We don't need a tool to actually do what you're saying, just actually need to do it and have it, right. Does anyone remember, and if you don't now, what was the cost of that school evaluation tool? I forget.
Yeah, it was also BOCES aidable, and Mr. Bartels would be able to tell us, but Mr. Bartels, last year when we were looking at it, we only were looking at it about this time last year just as to get information, so they were going to prorate it. I don't know if you remember what the full year would have cost.
I don't
Yeah,
know. what
off the top of your head, no, but it'd be something to think about in the future if we're going to add it in.
Sure.
Yeah, I just remember it was BOCES aidable, right, Mr. Bartels?
Yes, it
Yep.
was definitely BOCES aidable.
Mayor, just for the public, we go through the year approving policies at different times during the year. But at any time that we find that a policy is antiquated or doesn't serve the district well, we can bring that policy up and it can be changed. We're not stuck to anything that we approved tonight if we wanted to change it in 6 months. So we do have the opportunity to go in and change policies that are being constructed now. And the benefit of approving this now is we need a tool to evaluate Mr. Bartels. And it will take us too long to experiment on a tool. So we do really need to move, we do need to approve this and move forward so we have a tool to evaluate the superintendent.
Yeah, no, any of the policies can be revised, and I'd have to look back at the policy on policies, but usually usually in that policy, there is the provision where something needs to be done from an emergency basis, that it's usually either a majority of the board or all of the board members could agree to waive the second reading or a second going around. I'd have to confirm, but I'd be very surprised if your policy doesn't have that.
It does say that, yes. It does.
So it could be done, in very little notice if need be.
Right. So we're good with 4260 and 4261 moving to stage 2? Okay, we'll move that to stage 2, Mary Lou, next meeting. Any questions on 4270, evaluation of administrative staff?
So 4270, I just recommend that we make one revision. It currently says the board shall direct the superintendent of schools to conduct an annual evaluation of all administrative personnel. We should indicate or her designee. That aligns with practice of the district as well.
Is there typically a specific deadline for the administrator's evaluations, or is that dictated by?
In some ways it'll be a collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, yeah.
In some ways it will determine if it's a tenure year for particular personnel, but no, there's no set date that we could put in.
Thank you.
Just going back for a second to the policy we were just looking at in terms of the superintendent's evaluation. Mara, was your comments to suggest that we shouldn't put it through if we have no problems with it and we need to keep it for this year, that it shouldn't go through all the stages, we should move it along so we could use it?
Well, I think that in this situation, we don't need to pass it along because it could go to the next board meeting, and that's still prior to we'd be using it.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was a deadline that you were trying to get it to move quickly.
No, it was just more of based to respond to the question about changing policies in the future if we need to. Traditionally, I usually recommend unless something has to be expedited, don't.
Thanks.
By the way, I found the cost is $3,000 for the year.
3?
That's the total cost to BOCES that would then be aidable, so net us about $1,500.
After do we get that the first year, or is it only the next year?
The cost is in the first year, the reimbursement is in the second year.
Right, so it would be 3,000 for the first year, and then going forward, it would only cost us 15?
No, it costs us, it's $3,000 each year, and then the following year, we get $1,500 back in state aid. Yeah.
Thank you.
We okay moving evaluation for administrative staff to stage 2?
Yes.
Everybody's good?
Yep.
We're going to do 2340.
Okay, so 2340, just kind of a background, is 6110, which is currently on stage 2. That code of ethics is dealing for all district personnel as well as board members. The current 2340 indicated that there was a separate policy for board members and a separate policy for district personnel. The law provides the same rules for both groups. So the portions that dealing with school board ethics, code of ethics from 2340 was incorporated into 6110. So the revisions that are proposed in 2340 is to take out the duplicative sections. Although not legally required, I never recommend having the same thing dealt with in two policies, because what happens is, 10 years from now, no one, didn't realize that there's two separate policies doing the same thing. One gets revised, one doesn't. Which one applies? This is one be less important because it really is focused by law. So the law would apply regardless of what the policy says. But again, we just want to clean up to have, so 2340, there's a portion about the Board of Ethics that is remaining in the policy, and the rest of it, which is dealing with the Code of Ethics for school board members, is moved into 6110.
Although most of it has been strict, we've taken that out of 2340, we still need to keep that one paragraph and keep that policy on the books?
So for right now, we're not looking to strike out the Code of Ethics. So in order to keep that Code of Ethics, we would keep that portion in.
But
Until the reorg meeting, right?
Right. So at that point, if it's determined that there's really no need for the Code of Ethics, it is not a legally required group, then we would not fill that position. And then at that time, would probably make sense to rescind the entire policy and not have that policy.
So I know we spoke last meeting about, is there a need then to keep having it on our agenda moving forward, or can we just hold it until before reorg?
So the reason, I think that my recommendation would be is to make the revisions, remove the language that's duplicative.
I see, okay.
Keep that portion.
So take out.
Then if the decision is, you know what, we don't think that this is necessary, then we could rescind that portion. We could rescind the whole policy.
Thank you.
I just don't want the other language to kind of be sitting there, because it's, when you don't plan, then something's going to happen, and that's what's going to be, that there's going to be some difference.
Understood. Thank
So
you.
the priority is to strike that language.
To strike
really
that
right now.
language.
We could focus on the top
And
paragraph.
focus on the top paragraph. It doesn't, change anything. And if at the end of the year, when it's reorg, if we decide that we're not going to have that, then at that point, we would not approve it. We could even, and we could start the process of removing it, or we could even start the process in, say, May. So then May, it would be removed, June would be the second reading, and then it would be, fine for July.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move that to stage 2.
Yep.
On stage 2 now, we're looking at 6110, Code of Ethics for all district personnel.
There were some minor revisions that really just bring up the code to the law. It's one of the few policies that we actually do recommend to really just track the language of the law. Often I say I don't want to do that, because then when the law changes, the policy becomes outdated. The Code of Ethics is one of them, because it is an important document. It is something, it's not one of those policies that no one looks at. Every new employee gets it, the board members get it. It is an important policy, so it tracks the law.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
No.
All right, so we'll move that to stage 3 at our next meeting. All right, we're going to discuss school improvement bond discussion. Mr. Bartels, we'll put that, giving that to you.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to just bring this topic of a bond issue up. It's been 10 years since we've had our last bond issue. We do have numerous capital projects within the district that do need attention and more money that can be provided through annual budget allocations. Space continues to be an issue at several of our schools. Roofs need repair and replacement, especially at the middle school. We have elevator repairs that are necessary, but very expensive, and they have very long construction times, which would take them out of service while school is in session. And just in general, just like everybody's own homes, all of our buildings need constant upkeep and repair. And the bond process is a lengthy one, and we really need to start now or sometime soon in order to have any chance at a bond vote next fall. I think late fall is a better time for a bond vote, so it's not competing with the budget. So I think the fall is a better time for a vote. And we know what we have to put into the budget for capital expenses. So if there's any possibility of starting some of the work the following summer would be the earliest. Any large project would need state approval, would probably not be designed, state approved, bid, awarded, and lead times implemented before even starting construction before the spring of 2024 if we have a vote in the fall of 2022. We do have more debt service dropping off again this year. We're going to be restoring the transfer to capital line in the budget back to $1.8 million, which is great for a lot of the smaller projects, for playgrounds, for some site work and so forth. But we really need a bond for a lot of the larger work. We were going to use that number of the $1.8 million, which we have as a transfer for our current items, to be used for debt service. So once we would do a bond, that $1.8 million would be used for debt service. So we would kind of offset the costs within the budget, and we wouldn't have to increase our budget to incur any additional taxes to be required. It would fit with monies that are currently within the budget. So we would actually probably start the process by reviewing our facility surveys that are prepared by the architects, matching up those recommended projects with those recommended by each individual school, and recommend that each building have its own committee to determine what they feel their own building's needs are. We had held off on, we've talked about this over the last several years, actually right when Dr. Johnson was leaving, but then the pandemic hit. We've been busy with that and now searching for a permanent superintendent. I don't think we really can wait much longer. These issues that we're having with space and especially the middle school, the whole building itself, we need to move on them. So I really would like to start that process, but I wanted to kind of open it up for discussion with the board tonight to see, where the board felt. Is it something we would like to look at to try to move forward with at this time, or is it something we want to hold off on? I mean, my recommendation would be to move forward with something at this point, looking somewhere towards a bond vote next fall.
Questions, concerns?
I toured the middle school with Mr. O'Shea and some of the staff over there, and building is in desperate need of major work. And really, John and I talked about that at that meeting with Sheila, about what an example of a building that needs a lot of repair. I think my only question is time-wise, fall of 2022, which is just briefly into the start of the school year, we have a new superintendent coming in. How much does that give that person an opportunity to give input? Because there are obvious things that we know we need that we've talked about here over the years, and middle school being one of them as an issue. But some of the other visionary sorts of ideas, I just want to make sure that there's room. I basically am asking, because I haven't done the last bond, how much specifics do you have to give at that point in the fall of 2022 to put this and start rolling this? And is there then room for, opportunity for superintendent to chime in and put some vision into some of the things that could be included in the bond?
Well, I think there's absolutely time for any superintendent to be starting beginning July 1st, for example, to have the summer and the fall to look at it and make any final recommendations or changes. I don't think he's going to, or she is going to be making any drastic changes, things that we're not really thinking of, but it would give them that opportunity. If we're proposing an addition on a building, for example, and they thought maybe a larger addition or a different type of addition was necessary, we would have that flexibility within a bond to make those changes. No final designs would really be done you know, while that whole process is going on. That really wouldn't start until after a bond vote is completed. We certainly would have some preliminary designs at that point from architects, but those could always be modified before final plans are sent to the state for approval. So that's all going to happen after the bond vote. So
Okay.
I think that's well into that person's tenure.
Thank you.
I support starting this discussion sooner rather than later. I agree, Mr. Bartels, with your assessment. My question is, thank you for the proposed timeline, just so we have an idea. Could we get for the next meeting, maybe a visual of like a step-by-step of the process? So I'm assuming we have to go out for bid for architects, right? And then they do the review of their facilities, is that right? Or we do our own review and then you said they get compared?
Well, we have our architects review our facilities every year.
Right,
So we have some base information to go by, but we would really want them to go in and do a real in-depth look at all of our buildings. Look specifically, for example, at boilers. You know, we did a lot of boiler replacements in the last bond issue, so you know, but that type of thing we would have to look at. I know roofs are a big issue in some of our buildings. I know we have some large site work issues. I mentioned elevators, and elevators are going to be a big problem. We actually may need to add elevators at both the middle school and the high school just in order to repair the existing ones, because they will be taken out of service. It's probably a 3 or 4 month overhaul of those elevators because they are so old and so in need of repair. So there would be definitely that whole process, but I can give you
I know we're starting the budget workshops, but it will be helpful to have the conversations concurrently while we're doing the board tours.
Well,
building tours rather.
It's a good time to have those discussions. So as we're talking about projects that we may put into
Exactly.
for next year within the 1.8 million and what we may need to push off into a bond. So absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
The Board of Education is currently touring all our buildings and coming up with lists from the teachers, from the principals of specific needs. And those needs will then go out to the PTAs and committees in the building to make sure that we're looking at everything that other people are seeing besides our architects, the principals, and the teachers. So hopefully we'll compile a large list and be able to conquer most of those things. As Mrs. Hackett said, we were at the middle school, and roof is a major issue at the middle school and a major project that we will need to go out to bond. So next meeting, we'll get an update on the whole process, which is a lengthy process. That's why we're talking about starting it now. It takes a long time to, start to finish. So thank you, Mr. Bartels. All right. And now D is our topic of committees of the board. We've been in a conversation about what committees are the board is legally obligated to put forward and be represented in, and what committees are legal just for the school to have, and the board just makes sure that they are, are taken care of. So we're going to ask, hopefully, Mara to go down the list of what the committees we formed at the beginning of this year, and now with a new firm representing the school district, they're just going through things and telling us what's a necessity and what isn't a necessity of the Board of Education.
I want to start with saying that, there's no prohibition to having policy. So I don't want anyone to take the way that, anyone was doing anything wrong by having some of these policies or these committees, sorry. Also, various committees, they start up when there's a real issue. Like I know we have some clients that had started a vaping committee. Now, not that vaping is not an issue, but it's not the forefront right now. And so some of the committee, they continue, and some of them it goes away. So the New York State School Boards Association President, Council, and Legislative Committee, that is through New York State School Boards. That's the president, so by default, that would, for this year, would be John O'Shea. The Drug and Alcohol Committee, that is not a legally required committee. My understanding is that there is a organization outside of the school that does do a lot dealing with the drug and alcohol topic, and that board members can and probably should be involved in that committee, but if not, there's no need to have a separate and apart drug and alcohol committee. The mental health task force is also something that is not a legally required committee to have board members on or not on. Again, with that being said, not saying mental health is not important, it should be looked at. It doesn't necessarily have to be a committee with board members and or non-board members. They could be administrators, teachers, people in the school that are dealing with mental health, but there's no legal requirement to have a task force. The wellness committee, there is a requirement to have, and the district does have a wellness committee. There is no requirement to have a board member on such committee. The recommendation usually is to meet quarterly, so that we should keep going. The district-wide school safety team is also a legally required committee. It has met its requirements for this year. The ad hoc committee on facilities review, that is the policy, or the committee that does the building reviews, that is required, so that should remain. The athletics advisory committee is not legally required. Again, if there comes a time where the things need to be looked upon and the board thinks that it is necessary to have either an ad hoc committee formed at that time, there's nothing precluding the district from doing so. The school reentry planning committee, we're going to skip for right now. That's kind of a moving target. And the hope is that we never have to talk about reopening in a way other than the normal. Liaisons and representatives. SEP liaison and PTA council representatives, both of those are organizations that are really separate from the school district. It is not legally required to have a liaison to SEP. It is an open meeting for anyone to attend. There's nothing precluding a board member whether or not they have a child with special needs to attend. And nothing precludes someone from SEP, requesting someone to come or want to hear or talk to people. We have to remember that each individual board member is not the spokesperson for the board unless that the board as a whole directs them to. So they're really there in their individual capacity. Often, and it's not uncommon to have someone ask a question of procedurally, how is something done? There's no problem with responding it, but it's not a board committee or a board meeting. PTA council, same thing. Traditionally, that in many districts, it's the superintendent, potentially some assistant superintendents, building principals, presidents of PTAs. Again, there's no legal requirement to have board members being in attendance too. You always have to remember PTA is a separate entity from the school district, and you do need to respect that. The Rockville Center Education Foundation representative, again, there's no legal requirement. There's nothing wrong with board members, going and being the liaison between the foundation. Clearly, there's a connection or a nexus kind of with the two organizations, so that is possible. The Teacher Center Policy Board representative is not legally required. The Rockville Center Youth Community Council representative, again, is not legally required. Corresponding secretary is. Okay, you have some operating committees. The Finance Committee, again, is not legally required. The Educational Committee, Special Education Curriculum Instruction is not legally required. The Policy Review Committee is not legally required. I believe the board has decided that the whole board is going to be reviewing policies, how we've been doing the last couple of meetings, so a separate committee is not necessary. There's various committees that are, so the AIDS Advisory Council, it's an ad hoc committee. It would be needed if you're making a revision on content implementation or evaluation of the AIDS instruction program. So if at some point something needs to be changed in the curriculum about AIDS, at that point we would need to have a committee, but it doesn't have to have a standing committee if nothing is changing with regard to that. The audit committee is required. The board is, of the whole is the board committee. The professional development team is a required committee, consists of teachers, a superintendent, administrators, curriculum specialists. It's legally required to develop an annual review of a professional development plan. Shared decision-making committee is required. Board members are actually not allowed to be on that committee. So it's required, but board members should not be there. Parent advisory council, that is when parents and family members served by the district's Title I schools, and it's dealing, so that they would be involved. And again, board members don't need to be involved. And then there's two other committees which don't apply. I don't believe you have the seal of biliteracy here. And then dealing with Career Education Advisory Council, that's if you have a career education program in the district, then you would have, there's a committee that would have to be there. But my understanding, I think you use BOCES for that, correct?
Thank you, Mara.
You're
So
welcome.
Some of these committees are going to be dissolved because we've added a new item to our agenda, is the cabinet update. So as opposed to a board member reporting back to the community on what happened at a meeting, we'll have one of the directors or assistant superintendents or superintendent report back to what happened at those meetings. Next week we'll try to have a list, a more formalized list of what we're going to have and who's going to sit on those committees, and make that a final talk of the committees for the year.
But just to be clear, anything that is an open meeting to the public, like a PTA meeting or a SEP meeting, which is really just a branch of PTA, anybody can attend.
Yes. If it's meetings, so you don't have any less rights as a board member to go to meetings. So any meeting that's open to the public, a board member, whether or not they have children currently in the district, are able to go to. PTA, SEPT, trying to think of other good examples. School concert, often, it's always the concern is having 5 board members in the same place. Is it a meeting of the Board of Education? It's only a meeting of the Board of Education if you are doing board business. So if you are there as an individual parent, resident, or alike, you are not. With that being said, it is often, you have to be careful, especially like a PTA meeting. If the whole board is there, it can't turn into, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It doesn't mean you can't speak. But I always say it's a good habit is when you're there as a parent and not as a board member. When somebody says, I'm speaking as a resident, a mom, a dad, a grandpa, whatever it is. So that it's clear that you're speaking on your behalf and not on behalf of the board.
And removing the board-appointed liaisons to some of these organizations or committees probably makes that lean
It
more
makes
clear.
it even clearer, because when it becomes hard when it's like, okay, well, I'm here as a parent, but I'm also here as a board liaison, and then there comes the problem of, if you went in as being more of an observer, but you're really participating, you don't want to run afoul of laws that dealing with open meetings law and stuff like that.
And just a point of clarification, I'm sorry, I didn't get the name of the first speaker that came up to talk about curriculum, but the district curriculum committee is very much alive and functioning. We're just disbanding the board reporting out part of the curriculum committee. I just didn't want that.
And isn't that a PTA curriculum committee as well? That's a different thing.
The curriculum committee?
The PTA curriculum committee, I'm sorry. PTA curriculum committee is still going on. Again, what Mrs. Barry was talking about is our former superintendent set up committees with board members so that we could kind of talk to them and tell them what was going on in our offices. That's being disbanded, but I have PTA curriculum and there are board members who are on that committee. So it was redundant, so they come to those meetings.
And then you report out on anything big anyway to everybody at the meeting so everyone knows.
Correct.
Right, thanks. Just also one point, we will be attending as board members PTA meetings in conjunction with our board tours. But again, when we're there to gather information and bring it back to the board about the needs of that individual school based on our board tour, and not really to speak on behalf of the board and give our individual opinions about things at those meetings, correct?
That's correct.
Thanks.
And also, as we go to, if we are in numbers at a PTA meeting, a SEP meeting, or any other meeting, advice of counsel has said we should just be introduced as who we are, not the position we hold on the Board of Education. There are certain meetings we go in the capacity of the board, and that's fine, but otherwise it should just be our names, not our titles as we sit up here.
I think it's just important to kind of keep the distinction. It just makes things easier, and it's just clear. When you're announcing someone as their title, it's like, well, okay, then they're there for the title.
Right, understand.
Are we still going to continue to utilize the corresponding secretary role?
We have been. I'm the corresponding secretary, and I consult with Mary Lou on a daily basis on letters that come into the district. For the most part, if a letter comes into the district and it's something that can be answered by a particular cabinet member or an assistant superintendent or the superintendent themselves, and the content of the letter is something in their wheelhouse, they usually answer it, and then we share it with all of us. But yes, so far. That's just what we've been doing. I don't know whether we're required to have a corresponding secretary, but that's what was voted at the meeting in July, so that was my role.
That was created so that the district clerk didn't have the responsibility of drafting the responses, and I guess my question is, typically, the person who holds that position then bounces back, and we've been receiving numerous amounts of letters, that then the board creates a unified response that we all agree to and then send out at least to all the people that are writing to us, and I'm not seeing that happening. So I'm asking if that was part of things that were dissolved or if we are still utilizing that system, because
that has happened in terms of letters where the board themselves was addressed and we needed to come up with an answer. We've gone back and forth with emails with each other and answered those letters that were for the board only. But if a letter came in asking for clarification with regard to the curriculum, like 2 weeks ago, one came in, Janine prepared a response to that, and it was sent to all of us, and we were allowed to edit it if we had some comments as well.
yeah, no, I'm not talking about the ones that are aimed at the administration. I'm talking about the ones specifically for the board, because I'm trying to alleviate some of the pressure that I think ends up being on the district clerk, but it's not the district clerk's position to take a position for the board. I think that has to be circulated among the board members, and I think people need to be responded to.
We are circulating it among the board members. It's not her position. That's the way we've divided up what needs to be answered. The board can't answer questions when we don't know the answers and they're not in our wheelhouse. If someone writes in and asks a question that the superintendent can answer, he answers it and shares it with us. If you had a comment, you could have commented on it. But that's not for here.
Thank you. Until we find a better way or a different way to address the letters.
My question is, how do most districts handle responding to emails? Is it more like a automatic receipt, thank you for your email to the Board of Education, our next meeting is X date or whatever, or have you found that it's customary to offer some more, I guess, customized responses?
So in many cases, if it's something about curriculum, it would be forwarded to, a response would say, we're forwarding it to your curriculum, I'm forwarding to my curriculum person and asking them to provide a response. In most of the emails are handled that way. They're farmed out to the appropriate administrator to provide a response. And a lot of the other ones, sometimes there's no response needed. If someone is providing their thought about something, someone will say, thank you for your response. It's been forwarded to everyone to see. Very rarely will I see boards kind of responding unless there's a specific question that needs to be responded to. It also becomes difficult of dealing with emails and having conversations on email because the conversations have to be done in public.
Right.
So that's why often the response will be thank you very much for your email, and there may not be any substantive response, and then they'll put it on a report for the next board meeting to kind of maybe talk about the topic. Most of the emails that need a response or really are calling for a response, usually the curriculum, the business person, or a principal could provide the response.
Just looking to streamline it, because I think with adding the cabinet update, that also could be an opportunity if we're getting a tremendous amount of emails on one topic, it could be addressed at the next meeting by the appropriate administrator.
Is that what you're saying we should do, Mara, is not address them, like not pass that email down to the 5 of us to make sure it's saying what we need it to say? Should it be addressed at a meeting?
So I think that if it's something dealing with curriculum, the curriculum person,
Right, understand
you know,
that.
would
Right.
deal with. If it is something dealing with, you know, choices of masks and say it's the same kind of thing, then it should be put on, you know, the agenda to have a discussion about it. Because you need to make sure you're not having conversations by email, to discuss things.
But a simple response letting them know it will be a topic of discussion at a specific meeting with the date to show them that we've heard them and we are now adding it to the agenda would be an appropriate response.
You absolutely could say that, you know, that this
That's,
will
I
be
think,
something
important.
that we'll discuss. You know, the other piece is there'll be emails and you can't answer, and you're not gonna be able to answer every single email in a board meeting. And that's why I do a little bit hesitate to saying it'll be discussed at the next board meeting unless you know. Although I always recommend transparency and responding and responsiveness, you may not be able to get to every single email. And often emails aren't, there is no question. And which is totally appropriate. It's here, I want you to hear my thoughts and what's going on in my head. So just because someone gave thoughts doesn't, there's no response. It's that, you know, thank you very much. So it's hard to have a blanket kind of rule. If you see that the same topic is coming up over and over and over again, that is definitely an area that I would recommend putting on the next board meeting, or that you can, doesn't have to be the next one, and have a discussion about it so that, you know, there could be, if there's one person that says something and, you know, it's not, I'm not saying you can't put it on the next board meeting, but we may be here till 3 in the morning if you talk about every single email that comes in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Opportunity for superintendent, Mr. Bartels.
I think I'll be fairly brief. I want to thank the community for their input on the education discussion. I think it's important to hear their experiences, and we are planning on listening and working to resolve some of the issues that we have within our programs. I also wanted to thank the board for supporting my recommendations this evening, as well as taking the time to visit the different school buildings. I think that will also enhance our budget discussions when we start to talk about capital projects as well as the bond discussion. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Erica? Opportunity for board members.
All right, I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Zampino, Mrs. Hood, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Moss, Ms. Nisler-Cross, and Ms. McGinn, as well as members of our high school faculty for their willingness to engage in a discussion over our secondary framework over the past 2 weeks. I found this week's virtual presentation on the IB program very informative. I also enjoyed Mr. Murphy's and Mr. Moss's presentation at this week's Parent University. It's so important that opportunities are offered for parents to learn more about the academic program in the Rockville Center School District. I would like to thank the PTA Council as well as the high school PTA leadership for scheduling and hosting the event. I look forward to future Parent University sessions. I would also like to thank the Rockville Center Education Foundation for all they do for the students of the Rockville Center schools. You truly help to make excellence happen in all of our buildings. Thank you for your time and commitment to our students and staff. I would like to thank Mr. Bartels for taking the initiative to begin work on a bond. Many of our schools are sorely in need of repair and expansion. Thank you for your work on this large undertaking. I would like to thank Mrs. Love, her staff, our elementary principals, special education and general education teachers and staff, as well as our SEP leadership for their work on reimagining our elementary integrated co-teaching program. In less than 4 months, you were able to review the efficacy of the program, identify needed changes, and implement a new plan that will positively benefit our special education students' educational experience. Additionally, I'm happy to hear that we are committed to bringing a level 1 language class to the high school. This is truly excellent news. I appreciate your reflectiveness and commitment to best practice. With regards to our academic program, we are at a critical point. There are many students who have unfinished learning, which inherently places agency on our learning system. We have an opportunity to effectively address systemic issues which have been compounded by the pandemic by moving forward with an asset-based mindset, supporting students with the knowledge, skills, and a targeted curriculum which will help them to reach their respective potentials. I understand and respect the district's commitment to inclusivity. I do not disagree that all students should have the opportunity to enroll in the highest level classes offered. However, I would argue that providing multiple pathways to a diploma, may that be a local diploma, a Regents diploma, or Regents diploma with advanced designation, or an IB diploma, does not limit opportunity if enrollment remains open to all. In fact, providing pathways, not tracking, with multiple entry points encourages the habits of mind reflective of the IB learner profile, which is ingrained at both the middle level and the high school. By asking students to make thoughtful decisions about the rigor of the classes they choose to enroll in, we model balance. In offering choice, we require students to engage in deep thinking, metacognition, to understand who they are as learners, what their strengths are, and what their weaknesses are. We then encourage them to be risk takers, to consider enrolling in, and more importantly, persevering in at least one class that may be out of their comfort zone or more rigorous than what they thought they could master. Through this process, we teach them to communicate, to seek and welcome conversation with their parents, teachers, and guidance counselors in order to ultimately make the most informed decision about their academic pathway. Most importantly, we teach students that their learner profile is not static. Who they are as learners in grade 6 is not who they will be in grade 11. They are capable of tremendous growth. The worst thing we can do to our students is trap them in a cycle of unproductive struggle. We must prime our students for success. I am so confident that we, this board, our administrative team, our teachers, our staff, our parents, and our students can collectively make positive change that will benefit the students of this district. I appreciate everyone who took time to write to the Board of Education and who took time to speak tonight. I hear your concerns, and I look forward to the continuation of this conversation surrounding acceleration for all at the middle level. I hope everyone has a joyful and restful winter break. Thank you.
Mrs. Eckert?
Good evening. Just wanted to first and foremost say really happy that we have some exciting things coming up. For Red and Blue, I really wanted to say thank you to Ms. Rosetto and Mr. Bartels and your team for looking at all of the things that were brought up at the meeting and finding a way to make that event a success. I'm excited for the students. I'm excited for some parent participation, and it's just, to me, an exciting pathway of what's coming, and that hopefully that's the road to normalcy. So I appreciate that. Also would like to thank our high school staff. They've done some really amazing programs this last couple of weeks, specifically the IB webinar that they had held and the Parent University. I'd like to thank Donna Downing and Heather Tetta, our PTA Council presidents, for keeping that Parent University going. That's been going on for a few years. I think it is really helpful, and I love the suggestion that tonight about doing more of that, especially for our younger students' parents who might not know what's coming. It can be very intimidating, and it can be very scary when you're dealing with very little children and not knowing what's ahead. So I love that suggestion, and I do hope that we're going to be able to take our program and bring it into the elementary level more and more. But Ms. Nisler did such a fantastic job on that IB webinar that I sat in. Mr. Murphy, Mr. Moss, fantastic at the Parent University. So thank you very much for that. This has been such a challenging time for everybody. I want to recognize that I really do respect and feel all of what's come our way. It doesn't matter which side of an issue you're on. Everybody's really listening and reading and hearing. I don't know where we've come to the point of kind of putting people in different boxes. I think we just have to stay in the place of respect, and I really do respect each and every one of your opinions and thoughts about what's coming. I think it's been just a horrible time for everybody, and I hope that we can stay united and do this. We're at the 5-yard line. I'm excited. I think we can get there. I have to comment on the students that spoke. I'm always so impressed with them, their bravery to get up there. A little Mr. Middleton III, who was a first grader that read so beautifully. I'm so impressed. So thank you to the students that voiced their thoughts about this. I know it's been so hard on the teachers, the staff, and our little students of all ages, 5 to 18. It's so hard. So there's not one person that doesn't want to see this move forward. There's not one person that's looking to argue anybody on it. It's just we also want to make sure that we're keeping your kids safe. That's always where I come from personally. So thank you for your patience, and hopefully we can all see each other's faces very soon. Thank you.
Mrs. Kelly? Mrs. Barry?
I was lucky enough to attend the 6th grade concert last week, and it was such a great job, and it was such a pleasure to get to see them finally up on stage performing after it had to be rescheduled. So it was a nice way to start out February. Thank you to Mrs. Kramer and Mr. Mason for coming to speak on behalf of the Ed Foundation. I'm looking forward to attending the event on April 3rd. Thank you to our amazing administrative team for starting the really important conversations that have been asked for, and again, to the high school team especially for putting together several sessions in conjunction with the PTA Council and Parent U. And I agree, really important conversations to be including all of our parents, so that we get the K-12 picture that we've been working so hard to improve over the last few years. And Ms. Love and your team for bringing the important elementary changes to the ICT model. I fully support that, and I want to echo my fellow board members and thank you for your work on that as well. It's National School Counselor Week, so I just want to recognize our amazing school counselors and the incredible work that you do every single day to support our students. And thank you to all the students and everyone who came to the mic tonight, and as always, all of you that write in. Thank you so much.
It's hard to go next to last. It's sort of an echoing of everything that everyone has said. I attended the parent universities for many years, and I thank PTA for doing them again. They're very helpful. I attended one years ago on the middle years program, and when you sit there and you have it explained to you by the educators who do this and who have such a passion for it, you can understand the tenets of it and how involved it is and the entire system for your child, and that's invaluable when you're coming as a grammar school parent and you don't know anything about the program. I appreciate so much the SEP leadership and all you've done over the last few years to bring to light what we've discussed tonight and the changes that Ms. Love and her team have been able to implement at the grammar school. It's going to be invaluable for our children going forward. But I do think I echo Ms. Messier's sentiments about what we need to do at the middle school level. I do think that there is where most of the need is, and it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later in light of what's happened with COVID. I think we have wonderful educators, wonderful teachers, but they too must be feeling the stress of this, and perhaps this will be a solution for everyone to be able to do better. I want to thank everyone who wrote in. We do listen to all of your opinions, and we do answer the letters as best we can. Sometimes people speak about topics or ask questions that involve personnel or things we can't speak about, but we do try to be as responsive as possible. And for instance, tonight with the masking, we did receive all those letters, and that's part of the reason why it was on the agenda. Same with red and blue. When people express concern in large numbers, we do try to keep that topic on the agenda so that we can be open and honest and have a discussion, and people can speak and we can respond. I wish everyone a great February break. I think the best speakers tonight were the children who came to the microphone, because they speak with authenticity and their concerns are ones that we all need to hear. It's easy to sit here as adults and banter back and forth what our opinions are and have people decide for these children what's going to happen to them every day, and it's the most important thing to hear their little voices. So I thank them so much for speaking.
Thank you. I just have a comment. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining and sharing. And you'll be invited to the mic in a little while to share your other concerns. Masking in our schools was intended to be temporary. Tonight, about 2 years after the mandate was put in place, we determined the plan of how Rockwell Center School District will move forward once the New York State masking mandate ends. Tonight, the Board of Education and Administration have decided that our children's parents and guardians will have the right to make the decision on masking. Parental choice will be the rule here in Rockwell Center. Over the past few years, we've heard over and over and over again about the need for masking our children to control the COVID virus. We are now being told that those same cloth masks our children are permitted to wear do not make a difference, and that there is no science behind masking our children. Armed with that information, we are still at the mercy of our government officials to eliminate until they eliminate the masking mandate. What we have not heard much about is the damaging effects masking has had on our children. Masking our children has been shown to create negative effects on learning and has shown significant social and emotional harm to our children. According to many surveys, masking impairs verbal and nonverbal communication between teachers and students and has occasionally physical side effects. Masks made it harder for our children to hear and understand each other. Masks make it almost impossible for our children to identify facial expressions and emotions, which are so important in making human connections. Face masks have been shown to result in robotic and emotionless interaction between children and adults, and increase in the cases of anxiety and depression. The leading societies of pediatrics and youth mental health, along with the United States Surgeon General, have declared a youth mental health crisis in this country. Cases of depression, anxiety, and youth suicide are at an all-time high. As we learned at our last board meeting from the experts at the Northville Health Clinic here in Rockville Center children are visiting the clinic in very high numbers. We need to recognize the struggles that masking our children have created, and also recognize the struggles that may take place when some of us take our masks off. Talking with our children will help them understand and accept the emotional and academic challenges ahead. Please always remember, you are not alone. Reach out for help if you or your child need it. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll open the mic for visitors. Please state your name, address, and please try and keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Vargas, 121 Broadway. I'm a parent of two 10th graders enrolled in Southside High School. My daughter has played on the girls' varsity volleyball team for the past 2 years. Tonight, I am here on behalf of my 10th grade son and the community to express a strong interest in starting a boys volleyball program. Boys volleyball is the fastest growing boys youth sport in North America and the second fastest in the US. Currently, 41 of the 58 school districts in Nassau County offer boys volleyball as an interscholastic sport. My son and I created a survey and we posted it on social media, including the Rockville Center Booster Club Facebook page, to see how many boys would be interested in playing in the Rockville Center School District. I'm happy to report that 75 boys who will be entering grades 1 through 12 next year showed interest, 26 of them at the high school level. My son then met with Miss Rosetto and handed in the list of names, so she has that list for you. In the survey we sent out, many community members were excited to hear of this possibility. For example, Ryan Hoffman from the class of 2020 and a 4-year athlete of the girls' varsity volleyball team said when she was in high school, she lost track of the amount of times the boys at Southside High School had said to her that they wished there was a boys' volleyball team and that they would have tried out if there was one. Further, she felt not offering this program would prevent boys at Southside Southside School District from possibly finding a new hobby, passion, or a gift. Furthermore, we need more sports besides soccer, football, and wrestling for those boys who are looking to play a non-contact sport. Volleyball is that sport. In order to build a program, we know that it needs to start with the younger boys as well. I had spoken with Jack Bradley, another father of the school district, and he is actively involved in CYO athletics, and he informed me that they are beginning a CYO boys volleyball program this spring because the community has shown quite a bit of interest, so we see that it's starting young. We know that the middle school feeds into the high school program, so we need to think about that as well. Winter 2 is when volleyball in the middle school is offered, and the only sport there is wrestling. So we do need an additional option, and I know space could possibly be the issue. One thought is moving the wrestling mats from the gym to the cafeteria with the hopes of the volleyball team being able to use the gym. I've spoken to a friend who is an athletic director in a neighboring school district, and they make it work, and I'm hoping that we can make it work. So thank you for your time and consideration. The boys and their parents are hopeful this can start in September 2022, and if there's anything else we can do as a community, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rachel Ferrick. I live at 98 Arundel Road, and I'm here to vocalize my support for parental choice as it relates to mask mandates. Thank you, Mr. O'Shea, for asking the full board to be transparent on their positions on this matter. You owe the community your honest point of view here. Secret ballots won't do. I'm pleased that you seem unanimous in your support of Mr. Bartel's resolution, and I hope we aren't searching for loopholes to reverse course. Additionally, I'm not sure why we would provide KN95 masks to students. We don't provide masks to kids now unless they forget one. How would we pay for that? But that's a matter for another time. I'm also here to comment on the state of affairs in this community. I've remained relatively quiet over the past 2 years, putting my faith in our elected officials to choose what is best. In the last few months, COVID fatigue has certainly set in, as it has for everyone else. What is new now and different is that adults have a choice on whether they choose to protect themselves. And thankfully, as an American, I still have the power to make individual medical decisions for my children. I've been happy to do our part during this pandemic to protect my parents and grandparents. As I told the New York Times 2 weeks ago, if you've chosen not to be vaccinated at this point, that is your choice, but we cannot continue to place the burden of protecting adults onto our children. I support the freedom to make that choice. Just as a woman, I don't want any government entity telling me what I can do with my body. Some might say there is, quote, no study to support the claim that masks are harming our children. Of course there isn't one, yet, but we need only ask parents in this room or educators who feel they can speak freely without repercussion from administrators and union officials. We need only look at suicide rates for teenagers, the rise of the mental health crisis, reading delays, speech delays, on and on. I support the choice for anyone who wants to continue to wear a mask to do so. I also support educating our children about why some of their classmates will still continue to wear a mask after they themselves have stopped. Just as we have educated our children about why some kids need to wear glasses, sit in a wheelchair, are allergic to peanut butter, have sensitivity to loud noises, the list goes on. We must teach our children empathy. We must also teach them that it's okay to stand up and advocate for what they believe in, even if it is an opinion that differs from those who seem to have a greater opportunity to have their opinions heard, or seem to have more weight behind their particular position on issues. It is alarming to me that after I, someone who is considered by most standards to be moderate politically, voiced my desire to unmask the kids, I was approached by parents who thanked me for having the courage to speak up because they had already felt the stigma of, quote, questioning mandates. Where are we living that we have allowed that to happen in our community? This board has watched, allowed, and in some cases participated in allowing this kind of discord to sow within our community. I would like to remind the board that they are elected by parents in this town, not by teachers and certainly not by unions. There should be a clear distinction between church and state, and when those lines get blurred, the interest of our kids is not served. For those in this room who deem themselves progressive, I ask you to help steer this ship into the next phase of this reality and help lead the way for bringing back normalcy to our children's lives. It's okay to admit when we're wrong, and we've been wrong about the efficacy of these masks on our children for the last 2 years. Doubling down now only demonstrates ignorance, stubbornness, and the desire to be right. It is the least progressive stance you can take, but this is not a political issue.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and at this point, I expect the board to put our children first and advocate for choice.
Thank you very much.
Hi,
I'm Carrie Medlin, 1124 Maple Avenue, South Hempstead. I had a quick question. I know you're not answering it, but at some point, can you guys explain, this wasn't in my speech, but how the emails get counted? Like if you, because I've written a bunch of emails and I'm finding that when the email, like is there a cutoff before the board meeting? Like if I wrote it yesterday, is it not counted? Do I have to have my name and address in an email? Like could you just send that out to everyone or somehow let us know? Sure. Okay.
I usually get the agenda ready the week before, so I'm collecting all that information and I have to put it together. So today, if you sent something today, it would be on the next agenda.
Okay, and if your name and email, if your name isn't, I'm sorry, your address isn't on it, does it count?
I included that.
Like, what if you don't have your address on it, then is that email included in the count?
If your name is on it, I include that. Not so much your address, I have included.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was like left off. And if you send like 3 emails, do all 3 count? Or is it just if that one person sent 3, then do they count?
If it's on different days, they'll be in there.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want that to take up all my time. And you answered, so thank you. I had a whole speech here planned, and you know, I don't have to do it now because you did it at the beginning, so I really appreciate that from you. My whole thing here was to ask for you guys to do the vote that you did to give us clarity. I'll just take a part here. I had this whole long list where you keep saying you can't do anything, but you can, and you have chosen not to. You could have written a letter to the governor and you didn't. You could have joined with other districts and BOEs to advocate for our children. You didn't. You could have signed an amicus brief to support the Supreme Court decisions and you didn't. You could have let our kids have one day with free choice and you didn't. You could have let our kids enjoy sports and have attendance like other schools and you didn't. You could have gotten tents for our kids to eat outdoors and not on floors in classrooms with time constraints and you didn't. You could have found ways to give childhood back in all the little things like circle time, reading groups, activities, and more. You didn't. And so I was coming here to ask you to finally do something because you can, and you did it at the beginning, and I was like blown away, so I'm really, really, really thankful. The night that you sent the email and said that we didn't have, you had parental choice, I have late bedtime kids, I stink at bedtime, but I told them, they woke up like it was Christmas morning, and their cousins were texting and sending pictures like it was the first day of school with no mask. I have a little girl, she's never gone to school without a mask on, it was her second year. And I said, I'm really sorry, guys. They said you have to put them on. And they said, why, Mommy? Our cousins don't have them. They were FaceTiming this one in the neighboring town. And I shouldn't say this out loud in your presence, but I told them that we had weak people that were our leaders and that we had strong people in other neighborhoods. And they want to know why I'm always busy now and I'm not home and I'm doing things. And I said, because I'm fighting for you guys, because that's why we live in America, and I'm fighting. And I want you to know that Mommy's trying. And I'm so excited that tomorrow I get to tell them that if the governor changes it, the people in this town actually are fighting for them finally. Like that's a Christmas gift in and of itself, and I hope that that list grows. I hope that you pick more of these things. There's a reason that there's 50 years of research that circle time matters, that dances matter for these kids, that concerts matter without masks. Like, I'm not thankful that we can go now when they're in masks on a stage. I'd rather not see them. Because it's not giving them what it should. There's 50 years, we talk about science and research. There's research of why these things were created for our children. They don't get these years back. And every day, I'm trying to figure out how to give that back to them. And I've listened to you. You said we have to fight, I have to do it. I've been trying to learn how this all works. And I came here tonight, and in the first 10 minutes, you showed that something's working. So I'm really, really thankful, and I'm really happy to tell my kids that some people in this town are fighting for them. And I want to just echo what Rachel said. I think that it's important we keep talking about, including and non-bullying. I think we have to talk to teachers that might bully my children if they choose to not wear a mask. I think that we also need to acknowledge that that happens. I think that we also maybe need to strategize how they're placed in these classrooms. And I think we need to talk about those that choose not to wear a mask, how they might get bullied. We're very focused on those that will wear a mask. I don't wear a mask as an adult, and I'm bullied. And I'll tell you that this choice that I make, I grew up in this town, my parents grew up in this town, they have businesses in this town. I mean, I want to cry at night because I wanted that for my kids, and they're not getting what I got. And I work paycheck to paycheck to give that to them, and I don't even know what I'm fighting for if the community is not here. So I'm sorry my time's up. I thank you so much, and I'm really excited to tell my kids tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Hi. Oh gosh, that was loud. Karen Parker, 37 Southard Avenue. I
I came here to talk about something else, but I just briefly want to touch on the IB because I have a son who's out of college several years and a daughter who is in her last semester of her master's, and they both went through the IB program here at Southside, and they found it to be a rigorous course of study that prepared them for college. And they both commented on that they felt more prepared than some of their peers. And as a special ed parent, I also understand that we do need some choice, and it's not for everybody. But my fear is a system where kids are separated and a gifted and talented, or maybe the average ones here, and the slippery slope that is who makes that decision, who makes that determination. And I think as parents, we should really consider that, that who is evaluating the kids as to where they're going to end up. But what I came to talk about was I had written a letter and begging for answers, because I think over the last couple of years, we've forgotten how to talk to each other. We've forgotten how to work together. And it's a real shame, because a lot of us have worked together really successfully for a long time. And so I just feel like what's wrong right now is the way we're communicating, or the lack thereof. And so my letter was just really all about, like, what does, keep you guys from picking up the phone and calling an administrator or a community member and talking about whatever that letter they just wrote you was about, or the committees. I was on the athletic advisory committee. I thought it was a really great idea. I think all of those committees are great ideas for constant discussion, not just when there's an issue, but just constant discussion of what's coming up. And so some of the questions that I had asked, I think, were sort of answered in the discussions that you had at this meeting. And I mean, I guess that's enough, but there has to be a better way to have a back and forth. And I don't know how that happens. I mean, I mentioned in my letter that Dr. Johnson had president's meetings, with the PTA presidents. And during the president's meetings, Dr. Johnson would always come in and talk about things, and whatever was going on at your building, you would bring it up, and you'd get the answer right there from the source, or so he would say, I'm going to find out, or whatever the case may be. But it was just a little bit more back and forth. And like I said, I don't know the answers, but I kind of feel like with the discussion of the committees that you just had, you're sort of getting rid of them, and you're making plans for a way that you can give information to the community, but I don't know that you're making plans for a way that you can receive information from the community. So that's that, for what it's worth. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Alex Cohen, 5 Buckingham Road. Good evening, faculty and board. I would like to start off tonight by saying that I am not here to speak about athletics or to restart conversation about decisions that were made by this board regarding athletics. My reason for being here tonight is to express concern over how this board handles the mental health of students who so bravely come before them at these meetings. I was in attendance at the last board meeting where board members heard from a group of students who advocated for change to the upcoming Red and Blue meet. As they should be, they were greeted warmly by the board and told directly that what they had to say would influence decisions the board made regarding the meet. The students came to the podium with their concerns and potential solutions. They were polite, respectful, prepared, and well-spoken. I left the meeting feeling very positive. Students spoke, they were heard, and changes were made. What an empowering moment for these young women. Something was different from the last time I had seen a group of students speak before this very same board. I went back and watched the board meeting from August 2nd, 2021, and I encourage everyone here tonight to do the same. I figured out what felt different and was compelled to come here this evening. At that meeting, 9 students courageously came to the podium with their concerns and the toll they had taken on their mental health. They too were polite, respectful, prepared, and well-spoken. One after the next, they told personal stories of being bullied, harassed, feelings of being extremely shaken, unworthy, dragged through the mud, and emotional stress after returning from physical injury. These are all major mental health red flags. Incidents and emotions that are known triggers to lead to clinical depression, anxiety, and worse. Did anyone from the board follow up with these students to see if they were okay? Alert the school psychologist or social worker to let them know that there might be students who need help? These students were speaking directly to you, a group who should be their trusted adults. At the end of the meeting, when it came time for the board to make their comments, a few board members showed genuine sympathy and concern for the students. One board member did not acknowledge the girls at all, and one member took the wind right out of their already damaged sails, closing the meeting by saying, I quote, "The vote is what it is." And in regards to why the meeting was held, I quote, "Because the public asked for it. That's why we did it." Essentially telling 9 young women that their voices didn't matter. What they have been through doesn't matter. This is deeply disturbing to me. I've heard this board say time and time again that they are only and always looking out for the best interest of the children. You failed these 9 students and their peers who sat beside them while their heart-wrenching truths were dismissed. It is clear now that a final decision on the matter the girls were speaking about had been made prior to the meeting. The students did not deserve to hear this in the manner in which they did. The exact opposite of an empowering moment for them. Perhaps releasing this information later that night or the next day would have been more appropriate. I have 3 children in the Rockville Center School District, the oldest of which is in 5th grade. I want to feel confident that if and when the time comes that they speak before the board, that they are treated with unbiased respect and that their developing self-esteem is never overlooked. Right now, I do not have that confidence. I simply cannot wrap my brain around the fact that 2 groups of students stood up in front of the exact same board. One group embraced and one shunned. The mental health of children is too important to be selectively taken into consideration by this board. Thank you.
Roxanne Rizzi, 55 Kennedy Avenue. I've been before this board before. I am an educator. I educate little people because I like them more than I like adults. And that's the truth. I come to you because I sit every day and teach children technology from grades kindergarten to 5th grade and watch them chew on the mask that they're wearing. Chew the inside, the white of a blue mask with holes in it. 20 years from now, when we hear these children, God forbid, have cancer or suffering from some other debilitating diseases, we will ask ourselves why. And I'm giving you the answers, okay? One of them. But I really came tonight because I listened to the girls speak about red and blue. And I want to tell you about the story of Xander. Xander was a basketball player. For the last 11 months, he has been very ill, and parents couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. On March 5th, Xander collapsed after a very, very strenuous basketball workout. He was a basketball senior, played basketball, and was going to go to college for basketball. His parents have been trying to get him well. It is only now that they found out, they got the answers that they were looking for on what was wrong with a perfectly healthy boy who now has a heart rate of 168 at times, a click in the back of his throat that doesn't go away, a spasm, and debilitating migraines. They found the missing piece of the puzzle. Xander has a head injury, but he never had a blow to his head. That head injury came from the lack of oxygen while he was working out, playing basketball. Most days the kids played basketball like this, but on that particular day, the athletic director was coming around with the superintendent, so all children had to wear their mask up high while they were doing drills. That night, he passed out on his bathroom floor and hasn't been well since March 5th, 2021. I've been in touch with Xander's mother. It was one day, one practice, one governor, one coach, one principal, one superintendent that changed his life forever. Okay? Hypoxia is the term that they use. That's what happens when the brain doesn't get the oxygen that it needs to work properly. And the spasm happens from people who do not have proper oxygen to their brain. So I understand, I got here late, I was at another meeting, that masks are going to be optional, depending upon what this one governor, who we didn't elect, says. We have to think about, are we going to be that one superintendent, that one coach, that one athletic director who wants the girls to work out in red and blue with masks on their face? Are we those people? Because we will have to look those girls in the face in the future. And I don't have a girl in red and blue. But like I said, I like children a hell of a lot more than I like adults. And I have zero patience for ignorant adults. And I'm not saying you are. But these are the things that we have to think about. Because in the end, we're supposed to be here for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pauline Gibney, 1327 North Long Beach Road. Just like so many of the other parents that came up here tonight, I'd like to thank the board, Ms. Love, Dr. Sampino, Mr. Bartels, for changes to the elementary school curriculum, the ICT model, also the rollout of sources of strength in the elementary school. However, I am a parent that has been participating in the PTA, coming to board meetings for 6 years now, since my daughter entered Covert in kindergarten, and now she's 5th grader. She is a gen ed student, but my son Dalton, is in 4th grade, who has special needs, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned that it took so long for changes to be made to the curriculum in the elementary schools, which is the foundation of the education of our kids. You have to have a good foundation to move on to middle school and high school, and to be a good student in general. I'm also concerned, based on my experience, most especially with my son in special education, that we roll out these changes to curriculum and programs in a thoughtful and meaningful way for our students. The fact that I have a son with an IEP that in January of the school year still has not been read by his teacher is appalling. The fact that I don't know until he goes to an eye doctor appointment that he's not getting preferential seating, which is in his IEP, at the end of January in the school year is appalling to me. I shouldn't be fighting for these things that should be straightforward. We implemented an after-school program at the elementary schools for ELA and math, and I am still fighting to get a one-to-one to be with him for those programs. I can't send him to those programs when the work is not differentiated and he doesn't have the assistance that he is supposed to be getting. So I just ask that when we're implementing programs, we don't forget the basics. We need to do it meaningfully, and we need to deliver on what we're supposed to be delivering to our students. There needs to be equity. I shouldn't have to pull my son from these programs because the school district is not providing him the help he's supposed to get.
Connie,
Thank you.
Connie, have you reached out to your principal?
Yes. On a monthly basis, on a weekly basis on some of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
Am I allowed to talk again? I spoke before, this is a separate topic. Debbie Cuevas, 4 Rutland Avenue. My first comment is in hearing that you are going to be looking at a new school bond that, and this is, I don't mean to direct it to you, Mr. O'Shea, but we had talked about this prior to COVID, that we take a look at all of our buildings to make sure that they're accessible, fully accessible, and that some of our buildings, a person who's in a wheelchair, for me, it is my older son. For others, it may be a grandparent or a parent, would have to currently access buildings in off doorways, not where there is security, having to roam around buildings to get to certain spots. So I'm hopeful that we could possibly take the time to look at that if we are looking at a bond.
We are in the process of doing that at the middle and the high school now.
Okay, thank you.
It's in a work in progress.
Yeah, we had gotten a grant and we're doing that,
Okay,
creating
cool.
those ramps at both the middle school and the high school.
Great, thank you very much. And second, as we talk about masks coming off of our students, you know, again, not to belabor that I'm from SEP, but for our students with disabilities, for a lot of them, having to wear masks was a huge challenge and something to get used to. Now taking masks off is another transition for them. So I'm hopeful that the district has a plan in place on how to, you know, assist those students to get through that transition, because it's a little bit harder for them than it might be for a general ed student. So I'm just hopeful that something is put in place to help those
Mr.
students.
Bartels addressed that, but if you...
I might have been out of the room at that point, but
Yeah, we are discussing that with the students as far as for different reasons, for bullying, for anxiety, for any other issues that students have with the masks. We're going to be providing a social emotional staff to work with them for that.
great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie.
Hi, good evening. Donna Downing. I want to make 2 sets of comments, one on behalf of PTA and one personally. So I'll do PTA first. We want to thank Dr. Janine Sampino and Ms. Sonia Hood, both of whom have been working with us to keep us informed of all the ongoing teacher to professional development, which we know is more important than ever, and they're helping us plan future parent university sessions across varied levels of instruction. Thank you also to Mr. Murphy and Mr. Moss for your presentations, and we want to encourage all parents to attend the future sessions and watch at home the parent university presentations that we've already had. They are posted on the high school website, and they'll answer many of the questions posed here at the mic earlier during the curriculum portion. That's the end of my PTA comments. And now personally, Donna Downing, 15 Pickwick Terrace. I think it's great to be looking towards coming out of the pandemic, and it's more important than ever to be focused on education. Education and learning are what drive us forward as a district. This board is in the midst of a search for a new superintendent. It's a critical time for Rockville Center Schools. It's essential for everyone to work together to craft a vision of success for the short term as we address immediate concerns, as well as the long term. Where do we go from here? We need to bolster what is working well in our schools, and we have a chance to reimagine some things too. One of that most important ways to address concerns about learning loss is that prioritization of innovative teacher support and professional development. Education, as with anything complicated, is about nuance and degrees. I support the belief that all students can succeed,
I have faith in our deeply knowledgeable administrative team, our principals and our teachers, that they can evaluate and promote changes that support all of our students. Most importantly, we would never want to impose a ceiling on our students' potential at any age. So I'm excited and I'm energized about where we are as a district right now. There's a lot of opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
William Cooney, 91 Hempstead Avenue. On January 24th, Governor Hochul's mask mandate was ruled unconstitutional and violative of 2 state statutes by the Supreme Court of the state of New York for Nassau County. The superintendent sent an email at 10 p.m. that day stating that until there was a stay in effect, masks would be optional, and that the district has continued and will continue to follow the law. However, the next day, January 25th, at 6:59 a.m., the district reversed course and decided not to follow the law and to require masks in violation of the court order the district had acknowledged just 9 hours earlier. The only reason given was that an automatic stay is expected to be issued. In fact, nothing had changed between 10 p.m. on January 24th and the early morning of January 25th. There had been no stay of the court order, automatic or otherwise. The result is that the district forced students to be masked on January 25th in blatant violation of a court order. The supposed expectation that the court order would be stayed automatically did not make it so, and does not excuse this district's violation of the court order. Neither can you place the blame for the district's violation of the law at the feet of the state education department. The education department is, after all, part of the very government whose mask mandate was ruled unconstitutional and whose instructions to school districts to continue to enforce the mandate on January 25th were themselves in violation of the court order. Read the court order. It shows that the Hochul administration is governing this state with a seriously deficient understanding of and respect for the limits that have been placed on executive authority by the state legislature and by the state and federal constitutions. New York State is supposed to be a democratic republic in which it is the legislature, not the executive, that enacts laws, and in which it is the judiciary, not the education department, that decides when the executive has overstepped its constitutional and statutory limits and arrogated to itself legislative power to enact a law, as it did with this mask mandate. These checks and balances are not merely procedural niceties. They are essential to the preservation of our democratic form of government and of the rule of law.
Anyone else?
Frank Van Sant. I live in Huntington. Again, I'm president of the Rockville Center Teachers Association. First, on behalf of the teachers, I want to thank the parents for their recent, much-needed outpouring of friendly support. We felt your love, for sure, and that means the world to us. Thank you, Rockville Center parents. Second, thank you to our administrators for their work and good spirit as the virus surged we were all sorely tested. Third, I happily announce that the RVCTA has won a $15,000 NEA grant with likely possibility of having it be $20,000. It's called Take a Look at Teaching. The purpose is to inspire students to give serious consideration to teaching as a career and to feel supported in that thinking. We'll be investing in our students who participate in elementary school-based internships during the Senior Assess program, and supplementing our RVCTA scholarships already awarded to those who are considering a teaching career. Seniors should talk to their school counselor about these opportunities, and those who participate will actually gain their very first line on their teaching resumes. Finally, I have an obligation to remind the community of unresolved, unwarranted, and avoidable board attacks on teachers that have cost the district more than $125,000 in legal and related expenses. By year's end, that cost may well exceed $250,000. Thank you for listening.
Anyone else? Thank you, everybody. We'll proceed to the business of the meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as listed in the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Can I have a minute to approve the financial reports as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I have a motion to approve receipt of financial reports as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Bartels, can we just speak to the gift that's listed on the agenda?
Yes, Board Superintendent recommends acceptance of a gift from the Covert PTA for a mural to be painted on the auditorium wall of Covert School. So they're getting in an artist to actually paint a mural on the wall.
How beautiful.
That's nice.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
COVID PTA.
Can I have a motion to accept the gift?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much to the PTA at COVID. Can I have a motion to approve items for actions A through F?
So moved.
A second? Second?
She
Oh, I'm
seconded.
sorry. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody, for everybody.